Cool. Who's
Are we ready to go?
I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our meeting this evening. Councilor Teresa, would you lead us in the pledge?
I would be happy to. It's been a long time.
Yeah, yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kate. So tonight, as usual, we will start with the open podium. And we have, I think, 2 speakers tonight. We did have 3, and we have one that changed his mind at this point. And it's sort of like a public hearing. We give you, about 5 minutes, depending on how many people speak, So I have Zara Kirkwood. Is Zara here? Or is she Zooming?
I do not see her, so we'll just move on, and if she appears, we'll. Okay.
All right. I know Zara wanted to speak about the peddling and soliciting the town members. Mark Levine was to speak, and he is going to hold off on that till another time. So our third speaker, which is now going to be our first speaker, is Joe Messinio regarding the Salt Springs Water District. Joe, I know you're here. Where are you? Yeah, you got the podium. Like I said, we try to keep it 5 minutes, but since you're the only speaker, we
It'll be well less than that.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna rehash everything. Just for the record, my name is Joe Messinio. I live on Salt Springs Road within the proposed water district that's currently being worked on. I don't plan to spend a lot of time refuting many of the assumptions listed in the Barton with Judah's final report to the town. Although I have communicated a great deal of information to my neighbors in person and by email, challenging many of the assertions, which is no surprise to anybody here. I'd just like to focus on just a few things relative to the petition process. I object to the fact that 2 of the official petition books are held by Marlene Denny and a receptionist at Clear Path for Veterans. The New York Town Law, Section 191, is very clear on how the petition process is to be conducted. Ms. Denny and the Clear Path landowners have publicly supported this project, and they own significant land parcels that would benefit them financially if the water line is installed, courtesy of less than 100 residents that largely do not need or want public water. The petition will decide the fate of millions of dollars, and this project will tax these homes for the next 30 years, in most cases exceeding the life of the people who are actually in those homes. I don't think I've ever heard of a process where a quasi-polling place allows the candidates to administer the petition process. These parties are both interested parties and should not be a part of the signature collection procedure. I believe it should be strictly handled, as I read the law as well, that town officials and only town officials should manage the process within the town hall. The town clerk's going to have to certify the results based on the signatures collected by private individuals who have not been trained in proper procedures and who represent a financial interest in the project. One of the sites is arguably not even in our county, depending where in the building you are. I've personally spoken to dozens of homeowners in person, on the phone, in the district, and only one has reported water problems based on either quality or flow rate problems. In the cases where they've experienced the problems, they've simply implemented solutions and paid for them out of their own funds. So why would any of us want to pay for a lower quality water product when we have our own clean, fresh water? $800 to $900 a year may not be a lot of money to a $400,000 homeowner, but I've looked into the eyes of the folks who own the houses that are $120,000, which would for them represent in some cases 20 to 25% uplift in their annual tax bill. And that is a very meaningful amount of money to them. And Salt Springs Road, as you know, is very diverse. There's homes that are in the $800,000 range, and I think there's one that's slightly under 100. And there's a number of them that are relatively inexpensive homes. And then finally, the letter that was sent out that we received today, it clearly states the project is not intended for future growth. If this is the case, then I'm sure that the large landowners would not have a problem with agreeing to a covenant that would prohibit them from developing any multi-unit developments for a period of, say, 10 to 15 years. And that's it. Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Ms. Benio, before we wrap this up, would you mind if I ask you a couple quick questions?
Sure. You want me up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd
It's
be
easier.
fine, just for people who are Zooming.
Sure.
I've had a couple residents in the area reach out and say that you were running an information line of some kind, and you have a packet that you're circulating with information, and they've had differing opinions. I've myself had, seen some of the copies of some of the pages. I haven't seen the full document. Could you expand on the information that you're providing? Because there's been some feedback that's been,
Is this
not
the
positive.
purpose of this meeting? To interrogate me about that? Because it's
I-
it's a lengthy document, and I'll tell you in general. There was one document that was many of the questions that were asked by the public, many by me, the scam horns, and others. There was an official answer, and my response was my response and my opinion of that particular answer. In many cases, there were something like 40 questions where whoever answered the question, and there was no author, which would be unusual because in a public setting, I would ask a question, make a comment, and I would know who's talking. So there was no author on this. And in many cases, in parentheses, it just simply said unanswered. So was there opinion there? There was, but that was clearly delineated. And there are many things that I put in there that I believe are true in direct opposition to the report by Barton and Judas. And to be most specific, and I didn't want to relitigate this, but I'll be happy to if you'd like me to. There is no demonstrated need for water. I've spoken to over 40 homeowners, some of them 2 and 3 times. In one case, Mr. Neveldine said he had trouble because his water was cloudy. In other cases, they may have had trouble. They had filters, osmosis systems, any number of solutions, but they solved their own problem. I, for example, have an endless supply of water. My neighbors around me have an endless supply of water. Mr. Benson, he's a neighbor, he has an endless supply of water. It's clean water. So I don't know how long you want me to talk, but I could talk for an hour if you wanted me to, but again.
I think my concern was just that some folks seemed to think that it was an official town information line, that it wasn't someone in the neighborhood's opinion on or interpretation of the document.
I never said that that was an official line.
I think that it says official line.
Just said it was I don't remember exactly, the Salt Springs Road information.
So I think that the concern that I heard from some people was that it was misleading, that it seemed like it was coming either to Barton and LaJudas or the town, someone in an official
may have
capacity.
felt that, but if they listened carefully, or if they had called and asked me the question, I immediately represent who I was representing.
Yeah,
So your accusation, I think, is unfounded. Have you listened to the message on the machine?
I did, yeah, and to me, it
What are the
sounded,
exact words?
I didn't write it
Okay,
down.
so then if you don't know the exact words, there's no record, you'd have to go back and listen again and give me the exact words. But I think that's a stretch in terms of your interpretation of this line. So my assumption is Barton LaJudas could drone on here for long periods of time. We were limited to 3 to 5 minutes. That's when I felt it was necessary to go to the street, and we put a phone number there, and we have an information line, and it was never, ever, if that's the way they interpret it, that's their interpretation.
Thank you, Joe. I would like Tim just to clarify the petition process a little bit, because maybe that will help clear that up for some of us as far as who can get petitions in different
Yeah, so
scenarios.
it's my understanding that when petitions are passed, and they can be passed by anyone who is a notary, who is able to certify that the person that they're collecting the signatures from are the people that they say they are. That's what a notary allows you to do.
But they're
These are
actually
not
not notaries.
They're not notaries?
No,
Neither one
the
is
notary, the signature of the witness is
The
notarized.
signature of the witness?
Yeah.
Okay. But I don't, so anybody can pass the petitions. I'm not sure what your.
Well, I disagree with you. Section 191 is very clear. It says these petitions are to be treated as you were to treat a deed. Look, we don't have to do this right now because you don't have it with you, but section 191, and I have it at home, clearly states that it's to be handled by a town official.
And I can,
Well,
And that's something you're gonna have to research.
Yeah, we can
but
read-
I
We'll
read it.
talk to the water attorney about it.
yeah, there's a district, water district attorney, so, that we can reach out to him, because I know he was explaining the petition process, and, he felt that, I think Skyridge, he didn't feel they should pass that
But he said anybody that
petition.
lived, that was, affiliated with the district.
The district could, yeah.
So, I mean,
So
but
I
we'll get a
remember that.
ruling on it. Thank you.
Yeah, well,
We, for example, Sky Ridge, when Sarah and I had a conversation, Sarah was unaware if this was a Manlius town resident, water district resident, or anything, and we had a conversation, and again, arguably, that building is primarily in Madison
Right, yeah,
County, it's not even in our county.
right.
And I feel that if nothing else, even if Tim says it's not illegal, which I believe it is, it's very bad optics. You give Melissa Spicer's operation, the landowner of all that land, and Marlene Denny, who have been very vocal, the right to hold a document that is going to determine millions of dollars in expenditures that are going to be levied on a lot of, not even a lot of people, roughly 100 people that simply don't want it. So I think it's just bad optics, but it's bad practice. Why would you not? It's Sarah, I think you told me that it was designed for convenience. They still have 2 weeks. This is a nice level parking lot versus going to Clear Path with a crushed stone parking lot and hobbling into the building. I don't see where that is any more convenient than this. And why would you look to taint the process when you know it's a
Well,
hotly
at first,
contested issue?
I think the first choice was to come here. That is an option of if they're unable to be here, that we would direct them to someone who they could go to for a signature. But their first option, we recommend to come to town hall.
Their first option is that. What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
with a roughly 4-week period of time, if somebody doesn't feel strongly enough that they can't find a little bit of time to come to town hall.
Right.
And remember, Clear Path is all the way outside of town.
Yep.
It's very bad optics, because we know that the landowners of Clear Path they're digging test holes over there and doing test pits. There's all kinds of stuff going on because they're gonna develop that property.
Right.
Yet it's never been announced as one of the intentions. And Tim knows that this is not supposed to be intended for development. It's intended to solve problems if there were a demonstrated need for water.
Tim
I'll
knows
answer
what?
Another question if you want.
I'm not sure
What they're,
They're the ones asking questions, I'm just listening.
You started.
Yeah.
by the way, you're under no obligation to answer questions if you don't want to.
I'm happy to.
There's,
I speak for many, and when I tell you I've spoken to well over 40 people, I have spent tremendous amounts of time talking to folks. And while I'm not terribly concerned about the way it will turn out, I do not like this process.
Okay.
And I don't believe it's in keeping with the intent of the town law, the New York State town law.
We will follow up with that.
All right, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and we haven't, and Sarah still did not attend. Okay, so we'll move on to the item 4, which is approval of the minutes of 5/26/21.
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of 5/26.
There is an amendment to add the COLIA, a notation
Oh.
about the COLIA award
Okay.
in the beginning, so.
Yep. Very
Thank you
good.
for that.
Do I have a second?
So I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good. And we have abstract number 5. Is abstract number 11?
Abstract number 11, Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to approve abstract number 11 in the amount of $564,422.19.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Right. And next is item 6, which is 3GI, the Central New York Inland Port Zone Change Application from restricted agriculture, RA, to industrial. And the zone change application area to industrial April 2021. I think Matt Naparella, are you here to give that? All right, you're up, Engineer Naparella.
Who's it?
Chris Beck and Gail Howell.
Oh, yes.
And if we can share our screen. I've got both old-fashioned flip charts, or we can share our screen and put it on the board. Everyone okay that way?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, board members. I'm here in person. Thank you for allowing us to be here after these many arduous months of our pandemic. It's been difficult for all of us, I'm sure. With me tonight in person is my colleague, Jim Valentine. He's going to run our virtual PowerPoint and share that with the virtual world. Out there in the virtual world is the principal of the project and principal of 3GI, Eckert Chris Beck, and his colleague, Gail Cowley. Vita DeMarchi is still a part of the project, but she is unavailable for tonight. So part of what we're here is to reintroduce or re-discuss where we failed a year ago. And so the first slide would be, why are we here? Go ahead, Jim, can you take us to the next slide? Stocks issues. So what we want to do while Jim is getting us back up to speed is we have reapplied to the board for a zone change of residential agricultural land, redefined that area from where we were starting in 2019 and ending the spring of 2020, redefining that area to a 18-acre piece, and we'll get into the graphic of this specific area. But that denial, at least on our side, was based on, I think, 3 major points, and that denial was based on the perception of traffic impact for an inland port. It was based on the impact to the neighbors, and it was based on an overall industrial use to say, is if this doesn't happen, now we're opening this section of the town into other unknowns, the industrial zone being a district that allows all kinds of industrial uses that may not be acceptable within close proximity to the schools and other things that this property is next to. So why we are here is the area has been redefined, and again, I'll show you that graphic. As far as traffic measures and traffic control, and we've tried to express this a year ago, but the inland port is not the traffic generator. A port and the operations, and now this has been reduced to what's called a container pooling yard, is actually a traffic mitigation. And the fact that we are now seeing the DeWitt Manlius rail yard with more and more containers being offloaded. The 2019 acceptance of CSX to offload and unload international trade, which again just started in 2019, we're starting to see some of that. The new Amazon facility at the corner of Kirkville and 41 is now open as of last month. The 3.8 million square foot warehouse in Clay will be open, if not this fall, next spring of 2022. There was an announcement in Syracuse.com that a over 1 million square foot warehouse will be opening for United Auto in Lysander. And our position, and Chris will get into this in a couple minutes, is the products to fill these warehouses aren't coming down the thruway. They're coming to the rail yard in Manlius and DeWitt. The containers will be offloaded, and the containers right now, without any mitigation device, will be coming up Central Ave, coming down Fremont Road, past the 2 entrances to the elementary and middle school, taking a left at Kirkville where all the school buses go to the high school, and then getting to the 481 piece where they can further move on to the thruway and beyond. So traffic in our world is the port and the container pooling yard is a mitigation device, and we'll talk about how. The zone change, and we talk about impact of neighbors, and when again, redefining that limit, we are over 1,000 feet with this container pooling yard in this 18 acres from the nearest neighbor. And we are going to maintain a significant buffer as far as direct neighborhood impacts. And as far as the industrial use, and we'll see it in the next slide. Go ahead, Jim. We are surrounded by already industrial zone property. So this is the town of Manlius zone map as it exists. This hatched area is existing industrial zone in the town of Manlius. The purple areas are land controlled by 3GI or owned by 3GI that are currently zoned industrial. The remaining area, the middle area, is what we're talking about. And our proposed zone change area is the red area. That is 18 acres. That is what we are asking the town board to consider for this zone change from RA to I. The yellow area, that big yellow area, is to remain RA zone, but beyond that, 3GI is proposing to assign that area to a 501c3 non-for-profit, maintaining that buffer. And again, Chris will talk about that in a little bit. Jim, go ahead. So when we look at this same property in an aerial sense, and I think we went through this ad nauseum a year ago, what is happening and what are we going to be dealing with? But of importance here is 2 things on this slide. We are proposing to release and work with the towns, not only the town of Manlius, but the town of DeWitt, to assign and turn over an easement for a town road from the zone change parcel directly to Kirkville Road. That's that yellow dash line through the middle, thus circumventing that truck route that I just explained, which is passing up Fremont Road, passing the schools, waiting at the signal of Kirkville and turning left. If we can circumvent that traffic, we are certainly in favor of less impact to the schools, less impact to the residential neighbors, and getting a direct linkage from the rail yard to 481, which is just a quarter mile from that linkage point. So in that route, there is corridor pieces in which, yes, there is a wetland crossing. We've calculated that to be a less than a half-acre impact. The less than a half-acre impact is a permit through the Army Corps and DEC, but it's considered a nationwide permit. It is permittable with mitigation, but it is certainly something that a process through the Corps is acceptable to them if we can keep that under a half acre. Go ahead, John. As well, and we talked about this before, and Chris will get into it a little bit. 3GI has received, as of now, up to 5 NYSERDA grants. The last grant in which NYSERDA has given 3GI included a 2-phase piece. The first phase was the negotiation and the work with CSX to help offload international cargo for the benefit and for the asset of all of Central New York. So that portion of that grant has been achieved and has been, any grant as well from NYSERDA is a match. So 3GI has made an investment for the good of Central New York already. The second half of the latest grant from NYSERDA deals with the development of this container pooling yard. I'm not a real acronym guy, but CPO is, if you're in the industry, that's what they'll throw out acronyms all over. But the container pooling yard. We pressed pretty hard last year with the town board, and we were under some strain, mainly because our clock with NYSERDA was running out. And I think Mr. Beck expressed that and maybe even showed a little frustration at some points in time. But that was why. He was under significant pressure. We have since received an extension from NYSERDA. They are aware of our proceedings here at this point in time to continue that and to continue that application. And again, it's a matching grant to help develop that container pooling yard. And again, that container pooling yard is a yard in which the offloaded containers are both stacked and temporarily stored, but categorized and managed, and the truck traffic is managed, and the train traffic is managed, and the exports are pooled and matched up with boats coming to and from the Asian market. And that whole coordination is this management system that Chris has made some investments and made some inroads on, and actually 3 management systems to help run the CPO facility. So, and of course, we always talk about what are the impacts and what are the benefits to the local level and, you know, for your constituency or Manlius. Well, first off, before we talk about the benefits, we have to talk about what are the impacts. Frankly, the impacts, if they're not here, they're coming. We're seeing the end result of what the rail and the moving of heavy cargo into Central New York potentially will do. It has opened up markets. It has made Jeff Bezos say, this is a place to be. We're going to put one of the largest warehouses in the country in the Syracuse market. It's not by mistake. It's the fact that this area, just like it was in the late 1700s and 1800s as a feeder system off the Erie Canal, now we're a feeder system off of a rail system. You say, well, why? And I think we talked about this last year, and the fact that with the widening, and we got some pretty pictures, but I'm just going to talk to it, with the widening of the Panama Canal, which was now, time flies, what, 6-7 years ago. That allowed these massive freighter ships to get to the east coast of US and get to, frankly, Western Europe as well. It was such an important thing. The Port of New York, New Jersey spent over $1 billion to raise the Bayonne Bridge so these massive container ships can fit into the Port of New York, New Jersey. So if you're familiar with that area of New York City, it's pretty dense. There's no room for trucks to come in and out. But there is a CXS rail yard at the Port of New York, New Jersey. When they load cargo at the port, they follow the elevation system, and their system for CSX, the first stop coming out of New York City, and people are shocked when I tell them this, is the Manlius DeWitt rail yard. #1 stop. That cargo is coming. It's already, you're seeing the swelling of cargo laying on the sides of the CSX rail yard today. The impact of Manlius is now that cargo is going to get onto chassis and on trucks, and it's going to go up Central Ave, onto Fremont Road, onto Kirkville before it gets into our interstate road systems. It's here. The impact of Manlius is coming. The mitigation and the solution to that traffic impact is an inland port. And that is why, through Chris's efforts over the last 9 years, people said, yeah, this makes sense at the federal and state level. The property is a part of the New York State Transportation Plan because of his vision. Being a part of the New York State Transportation Plan means that this project site is available for federal funding. Our new administration is raising the flag saying we need to improve infrastructure and we need to reduce energy costs. This project is right in line with that. Trucks don't have to travel from central New York to New York, New Jersey. The train is going to do that, the more efficient means of transport. The infrastructure, and this is a minuscule piece of infrastructure to deal with this property, but it's eligible for federal monies. That's what's important. I think I'm going to be quiet now, and Chris, if you want to take over for a couple slides and improve upon my speech, go right ahead.
Well, thank you, Matt. Let me introduce, first of all, Gail Colley, who I've retained, and primarily her specialty is branding. And I've asked her to figure out how we should brand this port, because the container yard effectively is a port. And it'll be known worldwide as whatever we're going to brand it as. And I thought it was very important that she be introduced today, because I've told her that an integral part of how we're going to brand this really should be thought of by the people who are in the room right now. Because I don't think you want it to be Manlius, New York. I think you want it to be something that speaks to what it's part of. But before I go into the specifics of the conversation, I wanted to say thank you to Ed Theobald, because I know he's retiring. And I know nobody says thank you to somebody who's retiring, but I'm going to say that to you, Ed. Thank you for your service. It's been a long road, and I really appreciate guys who've done that for the years you've done it. So God bless you. Now, with that, I just want to have you kind of understand why you're in the middle of what I consider to be a major structural change. And this is what I spotted about 15 years ago. There's three major zones of traffic in the world. There's three in Asia, and that's where these massive boats come from. And they come from those three areas, and they're offloaded into smaller boats there. And then they're aggregated into massive boats. They go through the Panama Canal, and they go over to Europe, to those three areas. And they also go up to the port of New Jersey and the port of Virginia. Now, when they go to those ports and they go to each other's ports, they're offloaded into smaller boats, and they go down the coast and other places. But this is where the massive boats are going. And so this is what's connecting the economies of Europe and Asia, with Asia being the major center. Let's go to the next slide. So when you think about energy, the truck is really the most inefficient way of moving goods. And that correlates right over to the cost of business, the cost of sales. And if you're in the retail business, this is what Bezos spotted. That's a big cost. And if you can find a way to drive that out of your cost of doing business, you can compete very effectively with your customer. So much of his inventory sits on a boat, takes a long time to where it's getting to. But when it gets to a place, he puts it on a train. And that moves relatively quickly. But when it finally gets off the boat onto a train, then it has the high cost of moving it on a it's very much to CO2. Fuel and CO2 are really hand in hand. And so these are important things to think about when you think about retail. Now, when I began to think about this, I was really looking at the other side. I was trying to figure out how to take a low margin business like agriculture and try to get agriculture in central New York, be able to get cost out of their business model to get their products to the rest of the world. And that's why I was very much interested in finding empty containers. And that's why I was partnering to Worcester. But when Jeff Bezos came here, I said, oh my God, that solved the empty container problem, because I can now fill those up and send those to any part of the world. Because Jeff Bezos, the boat has already paid for the empty container. And so that's a great round trip for agriculture. Let's go to the next slide. Now, when you're thinking about fulfillment centers, when this chart was really put out by Jeff Bezos, this was his map as to where his fulfillment centers are. Now, fulfillment centers have to complement each other. No one fulfillment center has all the products. So our fulfillment center, where the green is, has small products. And so all the small products have to go to other fulfillment centers. But out of the Port of New Jersey. So the Port of New Jersey is where the X is. But we've learned from last year that they don't want any more cargo in the Port of New Jersey. They want it shipped up to Manlius. And they have a 24-hour schedule before they'll take anything into the Port of New Jersey. So it's all coming up by rail into the Port of New Jersey. And where does the fulfillment center exist in central New York? It's in Clay. Well, it comes in a 40-foot container. It's structurally able to go on the big boat. But when it goes in a 40-foot container, it has to be downsized into a 53-foot container. And that can be stacked, double stacked, but it can't be 5, 6 stacks, not adequate. But when it's downsized into a 53-foot container, it goes to distribution centers. So it can come to the distribution center next to me, or it can go to the one that he's building in Rome, or it can go to the one that he's building in Rochester, or the ones that he's planning to put on domestic and send it down through the east-west side of the rail system going into New York, central New York, or the one he's planning in Roosevelt Field. And so, or he can send those to distribution centers that he's planning on having in Boston, or west that he's planning on having in Chicago, or sending south. So what that means is that there's going to be a huge traffic jam developing right out there, right in your neighborhood. So let's go to the next slide. All this slide is really doing is it's kind of showing you how all of that cargo is coming, and it's going to be going to these different centers. I'm not doing this. This is just the result of what the business model is. But everybody copies Jeff Bezos because he's got a great business model. And so you heard about the fulfillment center that the auto guy is building, I guess, 20 miles away from you. But, you know, everybody's going to be copying that. It's not going to be warehouses. It's going to be fulfillment centers. And you have no control over it. And so more and more of these things are going to develop, and they're all going to be using this rail system. And it's going to drive the cost out of business, but it's going to just create a serious, serious problem for you. It's not me, it's for you. Next chart. So This is the issues around the big infrastructure bill, the things that are going on in Washington right now, I-81, and things that can be influenced to help deal with the billions of dollars of projects that need to be done on 481 and so on and so forth to deal with peak traffic flow and everything else. But we can deal with the problems that we have to deal with within our own resources, because we have three things going for us. We have NYSERDA will be our partner after we get through the next phase. They have ratepayer money. We have the ability to raise private capital to do it. And we have the ability to put user charges on those people who are using our facilities. And so let's go to the next chart. So one of the big problems that everybody's going to have, which are going to be right in the town of Manlius, is that there's going to be a huge concentration of diesel fuel and a huge concentration of petroleum fuel. And there's ways you can control that by just having control technologies, which are generally used at many of these truck stops. And so we had shared with you in previous conversations, and this will be part of the permitting process, not the zoning process, that we expect that there's going to be places along 481, which we'll have to set up in feeder facilities into our facility, where the trucks on a 24-hour basis will be able to come in and idle and stay there so we can hold them for a period of time. And when the train comes in, we can bring them into our facility, put them into these idling facilities just like this, and then let them in at the time the train's going, because trains go 24 hours a day. They just do. They are international, they are domestic, they go at different times, at different, and you have to, truck drivers want to drive from 8 to 5. They don't work 8 to 5. CSX doesn't care. People in the community should care. And particularly people in Manlius should care. Because if you have school kids that are anywhere near this traffic problem, you ought to care about their health. So I'm done.
So in summary, and again, the message gets complex, and we get into the operations of the CPO, we get into this global economy operation. You guys need to talk about, is this right to change this 18 acres from RA to industrial zone to help precipitate this mitigation effect? And that's really where we are. And the summation of this is, does it make sense in a geographic or a geometric scenario with the other surrounding land uses being industrial and the buffers we've created? Hopefully we've expressed that we are not a traffic generator, we are a traffic mitigator. Hopefully we've expressed that we are cognizant of the neighbors, both not only with regards to traffic, but environmental concerns and other issues. But that's why we think this is a good project. It is the logical spot next to this rail yard to provide this CPO container pooling yard. Heather asked me a question about, is 18 acres enough? And Chris mentioned the Worcester facility, of which is a container pooling yard on the western suburbs of Boston. That particular yard is just over 10 acres. It has triple and quadruple stack containers. It's been in operation, Chris, over 50 years, right, Chris?
Correct, but it doesn't have domestic, but it does have international.
The message here is an 18-acre yard will provide these measures that we're talking about. And understood when we first had conversations 7, 8 years ago, the vision was different and we were looking at warehousing on site and other things. Now we're looking at fulfilling the NYSERDA grant and providing an inland port in the form of a container pooling yard. The 18 acres is our request. That's why we're here, and thank you very much.
Thanks, man. Thank you, Chris. Just a couple of points I want to make here. And then I'm sure the board has questions too. You guys came under the time limit. That was great. So, you know, I've been in contact over, you know, the year recently with CSX, with Mohawk Global, you know, who've been very much involved. I think you were also involved at one time with them. And two things they point out. One is that they already have an inland port. A container yard is not necessarily an inland port. I mean, I know you said that was, but it's really, an inland port is already there. You know, that was what the CSX got with their $19 million grant from the, I think the state did that.
For the cranes.
Yeah, the crane and that type of thing. And the other thing is that they're concerned with the fact that there's a gate charge for them to go through your mitigation process, I guess you would say, and that it forces a delay in moving, you know, the cargo. You know, so I mean, I'm just throwing that out there, that those were their concerns. Again, I know we're talking zone change, okay? You got to bring it back to that. But I guess my question is that this certainly helps you with a gate fee. And I know we talked about roads, and we talked about Gurdon and the wetlands, and we talked about Fremont Road, which by the way is a county road, you know, so that's sort of a mess. And I've been in contact with Ed Mikulenko in DeWitt, and they are working on a grant to do a study for more grant money. Sound familiar? For a road that runs parallel to Kirkville along the sort of a service road. And I mean that, and they've always said to us, hey, if you can do that, that's great. We just want to pay for it, you know. So I get that too. So I guess I understand the zone change. I understand that what touches around it is industrial. Okay, I get all that, but I don't really get the plan. You know, how that's going to help us. I guess that's, I don't know, unless you have some other questions on that, Heather?
No, good. If that's your question, let me add on to it, and then maybe you could answer all the questions at once.
Okay, that'd
If
be
you can
good,
take,
yeah.
can you do that?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that would be awesome. So, remember when you came last time, I said all those things about vision and this concept, and understanding how we connect to the larger picture is so important. You know, I think also we could go right down to the heart of things, and I know that I care very much about answering the question, what happens to Pine Grove Middle School folks and the Fremont Road neighbors regarding traffic and safety? And that's an issue that we share with the county related to the road, regardless what happens in the zoning proposal. And also the 481 idea from Ed Mikulenko in the town of DeWitt, which is within the town of DeWitt and connects to us, is important. And it's also a decades-long process, possibly, but certainly more than a couple of years away. So it doesn't provide relief. So we've got these sort of separate issues that are connected. And I also think that hearing from Mohawk Logistics, they probably care very much about their relationship with CSX, and it's probably a great dynamic. And this does sound like it's also competition. And so I think that when I think about the importance of independent business activity in the community, I'm excited about the concept of newer infrastructure that's focused on green results and carbon reduction. However, we are going through a comprehensive planning process. And so I think that it's a ripe time, even though this is in front of us right this moment, it's also a time where we're working on the comprehensive planning. And so I think it's important to deal with it in that context, just like we are with the quarry proposal that's coming up. But if you gave us this proposal, this is my opinion, and I wonder, if you gave us this, here are the questions I'd have if you gave us this proposal with no history, no years of history. I would ask, I'm not sure already, isn't CSX working with Mohawk to get trucks out without going onto Fremont?
Okay,
Uh,
can I,
True?
can I speak for a second?
Yeah,
Can
sure.
we do the thing where, do you want to hold on to that question? And is there anyone else that has I feel like we should ask all our questions at once so you can respond at once. Is that?
Well, yeah, I know they're in tandem, they're already.
Okay, so I'm wondering about that, and I want to also know about Mohawk maybe doing nothing with regard to allowing local economies and local exporters access the trains. Like, I don't know what their plans are, and I don't know what they're doing in that regard. And I know that you've talked a lot about how this CPO, which is just the plan, not a big giant plan, but the plan for the CPO, container pooling yard and the operation, that you could provide that access to folks. So that's interesting too. Is that correct, I guess? Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Those were my wonderings, priorities, and questions.
And the only question I have is the same question I think we had last time is, when we talk about the long term, over the long term for this project, do we have a commitment from CSX to have access through their, that oil field, gas field, I forget what it was. Because the premise here is that this is kind of like a phase one where, it's a CPO for now, and eventually it becomes access to CSX. And I worry about moving forward with a dramatic zone change, R8 to industrial, understand it's zoned around industrial, without knowing that timeline. Do we even know if that access is ever going to be allowed? And if it is, what does the remediation process look like for that? Who's responsible for it? Who pays for it? So that we do get that access, because without that access, it would definitely allow for management of the traffic and the cargo, but I don't know if it justifies without access, if it really justifies the zone change, so that we're actually moving traffic off the road. And I appreciate the notion of managing it, but again, to get to where we want to be, where the traffic is off that road, do we have commitment for access?
And that's my question is, increasing left-hand turns into, on Fremont Road into this port and then out of the port or container yard or whatever you want to call it.
That's two
If
turns.
they use Fremont Road, yeah.
And that's what they're going to do
And it
for how
adds two
long?
turns.
And they did show the new road that they were trying to cut through from
Yeah.
Burton.
Right, that's different.
Again, there's wetlands, I know, and
Wetlands.
I think
Wetlands.
National Grid.
And then
is
I think
somewhere
that's
away.
why the question for the access to CSX rail yard is because the other access, we have two accesses to the site that are going to be arduous processes. And I just want to make sure that we know that, it's not going to all fall through.
And if that's a town road, that's putting another additional cost on our
Yeah,
infrastructure.
Burton is
Two.
town.
And I have one other question. So my question with the phase one of phase one is the access onto Fremont Road, which is a county road. And I'm curious if the county has given you a curb cut, whether they want that to be signaled, that's even closer to the school than Central Ave. And just wondering if that's all been worked out, or if that is also still to be determined.
Can I answer some of these questions?
You start, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead. Then let's, anybody else?
All right. We have access to Fremont Road right now. And I've talked extensively to the town of DeWitt, and they have a grant where they can bring, as probably Ed knows, a grant where they can potentially bring it down Gurdon Road and across my property in the interim and in through Fremont Road. So we can give them access that way. Now, when it comes to Mohawk Global Logistics, early on, I asked Mohawk Global Logistics whether they wanted to be part of what I was doing. And when they began to understand what this would mean to them, And I had developed the relationships with my CERTA and everything else. They pretty much controlled the marketplace as the logistics company. And so what they did is they put my corporation in gridlock because they had a major amount of shares. And so Mike McSherry refused to let me finish the grants. So I eventually had to buy him out personally so that he allowed me to go forward to finish paying the money necessary to finish the grants. Now, the reason why he did that he understood that if this project went forward, that Mohawk Logistics, as a logistics consultant, would lose a substantial amount of market share because we're open to any logistics company. He's a consultant. We'll take anybody that wants to come through us. We're agnostic. We don't care. Now, he's able to control, because of his presence for a long period of time, certain relationships to his benefit. And so I happen to know, Ed, that he spends a lot of money just going out and giving people money to try to figure out how he can curry favor to stop this project. Now, I have not done that. I'm not out there paying money people who are trying to get elected. I don't do that. What I do is I go to NYSERDA and I say to them, I want money from you to do the right thing. I'm here to get rid of CO2. I'm here to try to figure out how to get rid of air pollution. I'm here to try to figure out how to get traffic off the road 24/7. I'm here to try to help get $19 million so there's a gantry crane. I'm here so that CSX can't just have them come in any time of the day. I'm here to try to figure out how to do something for the community. That's why I'm here. Now, I know there's certain people who do things for other reasons. That's not who I am. I'm here for the community. And so one of the things I've said to you is that I'm prepared to give a substantial amount of this acreage into a 501c3. I'm prepared to give you access into CSX. I'm prepared to give you a road that gives you control to go in and do that. That's what I'm prepared to do. I'm prepared to give you treatment technology to deal with aldehydes. That's what I'm prepared to do. What are they prepared to do? I think they're just prepared to give money to candidates. That's not me. That's not who I am.
Chris, real quick question for you. And I was going to use the pun going off the rails a minute here. Can you clarify the 501c3 concept that you're looking at under that yellow area that still would be agriculture? I'm not sure what your intentions are with that.
Okay, so 501c3 is basically a not-for-profit. So one of my partners in life is the chairman emeritus of Audubon, Dan Lofgren.
Oh, I see.
So Dan was part of the last conversations that we had really with, I think John Deere for one was on it. A lot of people were invited on it. And Dan called me up after it and he said, Dan, Chris, these people just want to know, what you're trying to do. And I said, Dan, I'm just trying to do the right thing for the community. I'm trying to get rid of CO2. I'm trying to do the right thing. He says, these people want to know what you're trying to do. And I said, I'm trying to create wetlands. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. He said, well, just tell them that. Tell them you're going to put it in the 501c3. Tell them that's what you plan to do. I said, Dan, that's what I plan to do. He said, well, tell them. So I'll tell him, Dan. He's chair emeritus of Audubon. Is that important to you, Dan?
That's good, thank you.
Chris, is that the, so the idea is that it goes into the Audubon Society's trust or the Audubon Trust so that they.
One of a number of other not-for-profits that I have been dealing with. I've been dealing with a lot of not-for-profits with my Synapse Sustainability Trust over the last 2 decades. And I've partnered with a lot of them. And a lot of them.
I have clarity. The concept is that that land, whoever holds that land that you put it in trust to, they have an interest in maintaining its environmental integrity.
Yes, that's my goal. My goal is to put it in perpetuity into a 501c3.
So
one of the things that, just as an aside, one of the things that Jeff Bezos has, 501c3.
Right.
So I want to talk just briefly about, we touched upon the environmental sensitivity in the wetland areas and such. So just to be clear, I'm going to flip between these two, Jim. So go to the other one first. So you see the tree line. Plus or minus this tree line, and all of this land south of Kirkville Road, all the way to the new Amazon facility is jurisdictional wetland. It's all wet. The grass area, including the yellow that Chris was talking about, is upland. It is not jurisdictional. There is some floodplain in there, but it is not jurisdictional wetland. What Chris is saying is plus or minus, you kind of see this tree line again.
Yeah.
South of that tree line becomes the zone change area. North of that tree line becomes 501c3 donated. Gives us a lot of room for mitigative creation. A road system from that comes to here, we, as I mentioned earlier, will require impact to wetland, but less than a ½ acre. We have room and ample room to mitigate those impacts. If the road system goes anywhere else and has to get up to Kirkville or to 481, you're talking easily 5 to 10 acres of wetland impact. That is an individual permit. I don't care who you are. In New York State, that's at least a 2 to 3 year process. And you still have to provide replication. You can't replicate if the whole property is wetland. So I guess in my environmental civil engineering mind is, this is our access to alleviate that traffic concern. I look at this thing in the big picture and say, how do you get from this to 481?
Right.
And environmentally, I mean, I don't know, maybe these guys have more power and can talk to DEC better than my 35 years of experience in everything I've done,
right.
But I've never seen it when there is an alternative. This is an alternative, a viable alternative of which 3GI owns. So that's the way you're going to get this traffic from this rail yard to 481. In my mind.
Are you paying for that road?
We have the ability to get federal funding because we're in the New York State Transportation Plan. That we haven't got to that point, Tim, but that's part of the thought here and part of the pieces. Okay, do we build it? Do we have to match grants? Do we go to the federal government and say, this is a good thing and this is an impact to all of central New York, a positive impact, but a negative impact potentially to the town of Manlius? How can we help? Well, we can build a road. It's about 1,500 feet of road. 1,500 feet at $150 a foot. Okay, it's $500,000. Okay, let's see if we can get a grant for that. Does it make sense for the central New York economy? Me sitting here as a local business owner says, yes, but we don't know that yet. Can we get it? I think we apply. We've got a guy on the line here, Chris Beck, who has 100 years of experience dealing with the federal government. Right, Chris?
At least.
Listen, I've raised more than billions of dollars in public money, so I can tell private public money. resume.
Hey, Tim, quick question for you, because I know that's a planning board thing, but we were looking at one time going from Kirkville Road into, when we were looking at making that industrial up on the, further up. And wasn't there an issue going from agriculture to industrial, a road?
Well, there was a question raised about whether or not a road servicing an industrial property could go through a restricted agricultural property. So, yeah, that was an issue. So this is going to be the access point here to CSI?
So this is what we're considering. So again, in early discussions, so this is the gate. This gate has operated in what we'll call a west to east movement since the 1800s. CSX told Chris over the 9 years of discussions, they will not change the yard operation, and the traffic must move east out of the gatehouse, out of here. So the logical spot to get here is through this abandoned oil field.
Yeah.
At one point in time, Chris had a verbal discussion and a verbal agreement to take over this entire property and make it a part of it. That has been taken off the table. I think the question Heather had is, or John had, what's the timing? Where are we at? And part of what, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, what people in Florida at CSX said, show me the town's good faith with the zone change and come back to the table. It's a chicken and egg thing.
Who said that?
Someone from CSX, right, Chris?
Listen, I'm talking to Rob Gerardo all the time. He called me about 3 weeks ago. You know, I'm aware of this, but Amazon has its own division in CSX.
Good. Caitlin has a question.
Can you hear me, Chris?
Yes.
I'm looking at the map, and I see where it says future access through CSX property. I see the easement to the town for a road, and that's the road that you might be able to get federal funding for, correct?
No, it's the
First of all, federal funding.
Well, I just want to make sure I'm following, right? So that's what you're talking about, correct?
Federal funding is really not necessary for what I'm trying to do for all of you. Okay, I have the wherewithal with my partners to do this with NYSERDA and private capital. I just want you to know that.
That's helpful.
I'm able to do this.
The road would go. Whomever paid for it.
Yeah, and meandering, whatever, but that's a general.
Yeah, it's not just gonna be along the other lines, but
Yeah.
that's the general path it would follow.
with less than a half acre of wetland.
Impact that will have to be mitigated.
So, well, hold on, I have a train of thought. No pun intended, my apologies. I genuinely didn't mean to do that. So if we changed the zone and you could build the warehouses.
It's
It's
just the
not
one
warehouse
pool
anymore.
yard.
Just the
One
pool.
yard,
Yes.
one part.
No more warehouses.
Right. Then what if you can't get the roads?
Well, okay, so we're doing hypothetical conversation right now. And so the town of DeWitt is thinking about going in
Good question.
Gurdon Road right now for federal money. Okay.
Wait, because we need Gurdon Road. They're not looking at Gurdon Road.
Can I finish? I can do Gurdon Road and transverse Gurdon Road right over to Fremont Road in the interim.
Well, we don't want that. But Gurdon Road, according to Ed, he's not going through Gurdon Road. He's going parallel with the railroad track. That's what I understand.
Okay, so I have had a lot of conversations with Ed. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's got a grant going into the feds right now, and the federal government is, it's going to take some time for them to sort it out. So right now, I think that the path of least resistance right at the moment would be to try to bring it down Gurdon Road and transverse it right across my property into Fremont Road. That could be done relatively quickly. Now, that's not a long-term solution. That's a very short-term solution. A longer-term solution, which may take a year or two, is to do that yellow line.
You're saying there are multiple pathways. You're saying to make sure that the trucks are not going in front of Pine Grove Middle School.
Right, yes, to avoid that.
That's what I'm trying to help you all avoid. I am trying to come up with a creative way around the problem. Okay, so everybody can sit here and say, well, is this going to take long? Is this going to take this? Is this going to do this? I'm here to try to help. And I believe that that's what my engineer's trying to do.
I have 2 points, Chris. One is that I've talked to Maurice O'Connell at CSX. He does not want to pay a gate charge. They don't want to do that. Secondly, Fremont Road is already very complicated in a lot of vehicles, and now you'd have a trucks coming out and going north from the west side as cars are coming Fremont Road, north central. And I mean, during the morning school hour, it's a mess up there. I can't even see that as a temporary fix.
So Maurice basically is a lobbyist for CSX. CSX was, when they got the $19 million, which I helped them get, basically were given a rate which is extremely, extremely low. Okay, so they are getting a very low rate for international cargo.
Can I interrupt? I remember you sharing that their interest. I remember you sharing.
I know what their number is. Okay, I know what their number is.
They came to us, presented that to us right here for the inland port that they were building. That was what the $19 million was going towards.
The $19 million went along with an obligation, because I was very much part of this, guys, went with an obligation for them to guarantee a very extremely low rate. And that rate was implicit with money coming from NYSERDA to become part of a container yard port. Now,
Okay.
We've got a lot on the table here.
I think we're good.
Yeah, can I just interrupt and just say, I think I just heard Caitlin say, is there a problem to mitigate right now based on, I wanted to say something. Since you last brought this to us, I have followed what's happening in, rates of stuff coming basically. And of course, during the pandemic, there was a big gumming up in the works and a big backlog in the Port of New York. But the Port of New Jersey, Elizabeth, or basically the part where that CSX connects to, that comes up to us, was not gummed up. I assume because it's not as frequently used or whatever, but also because probably you weren't unloading things in New York. So that is something that came to pass. And since I'm very motivated to get our questions answered, because since we last talked to, another warehouse, the United Auto one, like in Lysander, came
Yeah,
on too.
that's just been in the last couple of days we've heard about that.
Right, and so right now we have a problem with Mohawk Logistics isn't coming to us saying, hey, there's gonna be a lot more truck traffic, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna help you with that. CSX is like, we're just trying to make up the money because we got a low rate on this, and Amazon, hello, Jeff Bezos, if you want to tell us how you think local government should connect the dots for you in terms of roads and infrastructure, we're always able to take your call. But I think that the concept of looking out for the actual people that are living nearby and in our community, dealing with our infrastructure problems in a way that doesn't put them off. And not being afraid of the fact that we're talking about competition for the railroad and a logistics company
Yeah.
is not a bad thing.
I guess my question is like, are we hearing from neighbors in this community that there are tons of trucks and that this
Yeah.
is the solution to solve it?
There's an increase.
Like
I don't think they're saying this is.
No, they're just saying
There are trucks.
there's
So-
trucks, yeah.
Why, and this gets back to even just the conversation from last year, why don't the trains just drive another half a mile up to DeWitt and unload there?
This is how the trucks get to the rail yard.
This is how the
Yeah.
trucks get to the rail yard.
Yeah,
So they can't unload in DeWitt, they have to unload in Manoa.
The gatehouse
In
is
East
the key.
Syracuse.
Yeah, and the problem is CSX won't move the gate building, but we have to make the zone change in order to possibly get access. And so we have to assume all of the risk to make the zone change. And then if CSX doesn't come through,
Right.
there's now an unmitigated oil field here that we have just surrounded with more industrial zoning.
right.
And what happens when we don't get access to CSX? The user fees for the CPO are not going to cover the cost of that property. And then we're going to have industrially zoned property that does not, in its current use, make a profit, justify the taxes. And so it will have to be sold and it will be zoned industrial. And so what I would say is, I am not willing to be the entity that takes the risk by making the zone change. If this is going to happen, CSX, we need to have a guarantee that access is going to be there. This project doesn't make sense without access to that oil field.
So that gets back to my question about like, what do we do if those roads don't come to fruition? Now it's just zoned industrial.
Yeah.
And it's just,
I think at the end of the day,
we're taking, like, so they want it good faith from the town, but in the meantime, we have to take all the risk.
Yeah.
And we'll have some really upset residents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
And more like you mentioned, only like more left-hand turns and like, I'm looking at this map and I'm just thinking.
changing the current bad traffic flow by adding more signals and more left turns.
Yeah.
so we can do one of two things. Okay, one is add it to the comprehensive plan. That's what we do.
It's already a part, we're already talking about it.
And drag this out another year,
Yeah.
or we can decide whether or not we want to make this zone change or not.
I don't think I can vote yes to change the zone without CSX
Yeah.
telling us there's going to be access.
Right.
Otherwise, we're just making something industrial that won't be viable economically, and in a couple of years, it'll just be industrial zoning.
And I feel like we're just wasting people's time if we already feel very strongly about that.
Yeah.
Like we dug into this last year.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to hem and
I-
haw and make
Yeah,
them come
and
back and
and I
present
think
week after
we
week.
And I think we give them an
appreciate being-
opportunity to.
Yeah,
to,
we appreciate
you know,
This
work
was really
with us.
helpful. I
let's
feel
see
like
if
I
there's
have more
something
clarity
new,
now.
you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't think it changed, I really don't.
No, I don't.
No.
But I think we need to hear from somebody pretty high up at CSX saying
Yeah.
they're willing to do it.
Yeah.
And if we had that, it would be a completely different conversation.
And I feel like I'm sure that the Amazons and, Jeff Bezos and auto parts warehouses, they're not sitting there and looking at Manoa and thinking, there's a school there and that's where my cargo will get offloaded. And like, that's what they care about. I'm sure that's not the case. But I also think that that they're seeing what's happening in our community and they're locating their warehouses here. So they're not saying there's a huge infrastructure problem that if only we could solve with this one thing, now we'd locate there. The things are already coming.
And I'll tell you another thing they're doing right now, and I think after I talked to Maurice, they might have stopped this, but the traffic started to go on Fremont Road down to 290, Manlius Road. It was also going to Fremont all the way to Tap, because I think the work that they were doing on 481 with that light they put in there just bogged everything down. And so already we had a problem because of that issue, so I couldn't imagine if we put a road in, how much more that would be the problem, so.
So is it appropriate do we need to, I agree with that. I think that we need the CSX's involvement and not just tangential and not just, hey, but this meeting is recorded. If there needs to be a letter that we send saying, we're curious about this, we're
Yep.
having one conversation, but it's completely dependent on understanding your position.
Yeah.
And also probably getting some clarification on the user charges and how to feel about
Yeah.
that.
You know what I need more than anything else? Friends.
What?
A what?
I need people who are on my side of the table. I don't need enemies. I need people who say, Chris, your ideas are the ideas that we want. We want to help you.
Chris, the ideas that you have are the ideas that we want, but we need access to the CSX to consider.
Or it doesn't work.
But they're not, see, CSX is not going to talk to you, or they talk to me all the time, but they'll talk to us.
And then you get the letter from CSX that can be provided.
They won't give me a letter. They'll talk, once you give me a zoning change.
It's extraordinary. We're being forced to do
Like
something.
the, you
No.
know,
I,
I'll get them in the room.
no, there's no motion.
No
We just-
motion?
Because
No,
we're not
you have to
going
do
to
a
make
whole
the zone
process
change.
if you were gonna do that.
Okay, so we don't even have, no one has to make a motion.
And we've
You know,
already
you know
done
I
that
love making
process.
yes.
We've already done that process last year.
Right.
And when we hear from CSX, we'll bring it to the comprehensive plan.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I think that this issue is a bigger issue. It's not just the town of
It is a
Manlius
big
issue.
issue.
It's regional.
Onondaga County
And
wide.
I think,
Yeah.
I think our coordination, we're trying to work with Ed McClintock might help.
Yeah, we're talking to Ed. I know you talked to the county. I don't know if they have any specific plans for this, but
They really
we
don't.
need to let the
Well,
county know
actually,
that.
I spoke to Kevin Holmquist about this before.
Oh, I
before
did,
this
and he
meeting.
said he was hopeful.
Yeah, because I just think this is a bigger regional issue.
Yeah.
What was his thought on it?
On what? I'm sorry, we could-
Yeah, would you talk?
He didn't have any details about
Yeah.
this.
Oh, okay.
But well, he did reference the new, the Route 81 infrastructure money will bring some money to 481 and it.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
They
right,
did,
right.
and they did
Yeah.
commit, this was one thing that I noticed in the presentation, 481 is going to be mitigated, they are addressing
Yeah,
transportation
yeah.
issues. They weren't originally, but then everyone into it and, on our side of town threw a fit.
But we don't,
and
yeah, we don't know how that's going to
We don't know
affect
the
us at
details, but there is a
481 in
commitment.
Kirkville. You know, that's,
To address
Exactly.
the traffic on
Right.
481. the
that's part of
increased
another study there.
Yeah, they're working on that right now. But I think that I would, to make this decision in a vacuum as the Manlius Town Board, it's just, there are so many stakeholders that need to be in this room with us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Informing us and saying, yes, we commit to this, yes, this senator, that assembly person.
Well, last time for the larger project, let's revisit who said what when. Assemblyman Sturpey was supportive, Superintendent Desiato said anything that mitigates traffic
Right.
is what we're in favor of right now.
I think Magnarelli's part of transportation.
Magnarelli, right, had
So-
advocated, so
Yeah.
people generally, but CSX was not there, so I think they are a key
Yep.
stakeholder.
Okay.
conversation.
All right, so we can,
So let the minutes reflect
Yeah.
that, that the board there is no support for a zone change to industrial based on the application that's been provided until, or unless the board gets some indication from CSX that it will allow access to its rail yard.
What?
yes,
It has access right now into Fremont. I got that.
Agreed. Okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very
Thank you for
much,
coming.
Matt.
Back in 2 weeks.
All right, so thank you, board. That was, we knew there was gonna be a lot of information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
This
some
was
new information.
Good information.
Yeah, no, I think that was helpful. I think the pieces that we need to have seem clearer
Yeah.
now than it did a year ago.
Right. Very good, and we learn more and more about it each time.
I would love it if someone from CSX would just come here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think they're gonna say, oh yeah, put a gate in, that's gonna charge us more. They're not gonna say that, so.
No, they don't want that. I know.
But they might be, their hand might be forced at some point, or they might see that they're gonna be overwhelmed or whatever,
Right.
and.
I think that we're how I'm understanding it, if all of these businesses are opening, all these warehouses are coming, like the Amazon and all the other things, and it's great, or, it's maybe sometimes not so great, depending on the different perspectives that we're all looking at. But these are all happening peripherally, not in our community. If it really starts to become a major issue in East Syracuse
Yeah.
and in Manoa, then I think that there's more conversations to be had at that time. Preventing a problem that's, we have it might get worse. It's just so
And it's important
esoteric.
to point out that we are aware of it and we're
Right.
monitoring it and we're looking for every solution possible.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
one of the
CSX
things
can come
we
to the
can,
table.
one of the things that's tricky too is thinking about, I was asking Tim about this, regulating the speeds and the times that trucks can travel on Fremont.
It's a county road, right?
It's a county road,
Yeah.
so the county commissioner would have to
Well, there we go.
determine that.
Another conversation we need to have.
Another conversation,
Yeah.
but also
We
related
talked about
to,
curb cuts
you
and all
can't
sorts of
stop the
things.
flow of a road that's an access to a highway. So it may be deemed as like a flow route.
Right, right, right.
So
And
we
that's,
can-
that's actually industrial there too, right off from that. so.
And it's like that when we have these conversations about like the regional transportation plan, and I know that there were some side conversations and meetings with folks. I think if my recollection is correct, it was councilors Deere and Waters who were in those meetings. Like they should come
Yeah,
here and
But
talk to us.
SMTC.
And like, what is this
Mhm.
regional transportation plan? And if it all comes down and it's this big flow and it all ends in Manoa, then we have to talk about Manoa. And that means they should come here and talk to us. And until they do, I'm not just,
Metropolis. Manoa.
I know, Manoa, it's interesting. And I will make this a 30-second tangent and I promise I won't continue. Manlius grew up around like horses and
Right, they were
like
the farm.
wagons.
They were farms.
And then, and so like you follow Route 92, that was all like horses and buggies and whatnot.
Yeah,
And then,
right, right.
Fayetteville grew up around the Ledyard Canal, not the Erie Canal, the Ledyard
Ledyard,
Canal.
yeah.
And Manoa was trains. So we are just like one big like transportation. Our history is just so interesting.
Very true. It's changed a lot over the years.
Yeah, you can
All
get
right.
really nerdy really fast.
So let's move on to setting a public hearing, a set date for a public hearing on the law modification of the 2-year terms for highway superintendent and town clerk to 4-year terms. And what were the
Allison,
dates
what
we
date
were
would we
shooting?
have
Yeah, I'm
set
trying to remember. I forgot to ask you, Alice.
So
What is
we
it?
do have a hard deadline. We need to get the proposition language to the Board of Elections by August 2nd.
By
So we
what?
would have to have a
August?
public hearing and vote on it. If, when we vote yes, that proposition language has to make
So
it,
would you like to have the public hearing at the next?
if possible.
Can we,
Yeah.
can we do that? All right.
So I
We
can
need-
make that
We
motion.
need 2 of them, right?
There's
Two
two,
separate-
there's two separate local laws.
Yeah.
And you can set them for
So-
6:35 and 6:40, even though we do have open podium, we just cannot start the meeting prior to that.
Okay,
Or
so
the-
I will make a
or the-
motion. I'll let you make the other one, Jen. I will make a motion to set a public hearing for the highway superintendent at 6:35 to change the terms.
Okay, we'll do second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
Opposed? Carried.
All right,
And
Mr.
next.
Supervisor, I will make a motion to set the date of public hearing for the local law to change the terms of the office of town clerk from 2 to 4 years for June 24th at 6:40.
The 4th or 3rd.
PM.
23rd.
And I'll second that.
6:40 is that?
6:40.
40, okay.
Yeah.
PM, yes, all in favor?
I,
Opposed? Carried. Very good.
Aye.
And they all go that fast. All right.
Does anybody have any que- everybody good with all
Yeah, any
the wording in the
questions?
local law in terms of what's gonna be on the, because that's literally
I'll
gonna be
do
what's on
that.
the ballot.
I'll do that.
And that will go in the newspaper and all that.
What's that?
It goes in the newspaper and all.
Right. Okay, so next on the list here is, I guess we're revisiting the 457 deferred comp plan.
I know we have 2 guests
Do we?
from the
Okay.
PBA.
All right, before we invite them up here, I'd like to give the little history of the 457 and how we got to where we did today. It was at least 6 years ago, I believe, and could be more like 7, when we started the conversation when you brought it to my attention, Ann, who had actually just rejoined us as a town manager in 2011 at that time, that our 457 was out of compliance. And there were 2 key factors that sort of jumped out at us. One is that we were to go out to bid every 5 years for the plan. And the second thing was, we actually had 2 plans at the time, which that was out of compliance because they're based on how much is invested in our invested assets in order to qualify to have 2 plans. So, and those, and they were in force before I came on board in 2010. So I'm not sure how much longer ahead before then. I know the second one came on after. The one was nationwide, and I forgot what the other one was. All I know is they were very expensive. So when we went out to RFP, we received bids back from Nationwide. Again, it was our current carrier, Mass Mutual, which is now part of Empower, and Lincoln
Which
Financial.
is not the local mortgage company.
Right,
Federal credit union.
not the credit union.
Right.
Lincoln Financial and also the New York State plan. And so since at that time, well, still now, my background is financial advisor, having experience working with group qualified plans and, like 401ks, 403bs, SEPs, and so on. I met actually with my broker dealer, who, again, we're independent brokers, so we're independent. We don't work for a investment company, right? We work for our clients. So I sat down with him and we analyzed all the costs, much like we did for these here. The structures, we compared all the plans. And at that time, we narrowed it down to two programs. One was Mass Mutual, and the other one was Lincoln Financial, which had the lower fees than Nationwide, which was really the most expensive at that time. And other than the New York State plan, which was lower fee than everybody. But we, oh, and I remember too, that new quote, when we got the new quotes, I remember Nationwide's stable value had quite a fee that really brought the net down, and it wasn't as competitive as everyone thought. And since we had always had local dedicated client representatives, investment advisors, serving our employees, we felt that we should try to maintain that service to our employees. So when it came down to the deciding factor, and I'm going by a lot of memory, but for some reason I can't get this out of my head. It came down to between Mass Mutual and Lincoln Financial. And the main reason we went with Lincoln was because they, at that time, offered the 321 fiduciary protection that Lincoln provided, and Mass Mutual did not at that time. So again, that was to protect the employer, okay, in that program. So I just thought it'd be important so everyone understands that, this was an analysis that I did at the time with my experts that I worked with. And then that was how we decided as a board based on those recommendations. So now we have new proposals, as we all know. And at our last meeting, it was decided that we would stay with Lincoln mainly at that time because we felt that the fees were competitive as the others. Stable value was, at that time, was competitive. And what we did was, in the meantime, Ann and Dan, Jeffrey, and I researched and got more updated information on on the stable value rates of each of those programs current. Because what we did have were old rates, like the end of December of 2020. So we have the new rates, and I sent those out to you today. All right, so so that we can be up for discussion on the new information that we discussed. All right, but in the meantime, so I just wanted to review that again from last meeting and from our historic value of how we got where we are today.
So question on that.
Yes.
When you were evaluating the plans 6 years ago, you said you had narrowed it down to the two. Was Mr. Jeffries presenting both of those plans?
I don't recall. I know that, I know Dan was involved with it. What? No? Okay, I couldn't remember
I
that.
did not present Mass Mutual. I had access to it, but there was another advisor.
Oh, all right, okay. Yeah,
I represented Lincoln.
Yeah.
I offered the ability to bring Mass Mutual, but at the time, there was another vendor, just like Equitable. I didn't bring Equitable to you guys this time, they came to direct.
Right, okay. Yeah, so it was mainly based on, not really the advisor as it was based on the analysis of the plan.
Okay.
You know, at least that's what my decision was.
And when you were preparing the analysis this time, and I know you and I, of course, as everyone is well aware, at this juncture, both have backgrounds in
Yes.
financial planning and investment advising. When you were analyzing the plans this time, was it you doing an independent analysis of each, or was Mr. Jeffries assisting you in analyzing the plans?
No, Dan, because he actually represents pretty much all of them except for New York State, I think, as you know, we have fiduciary responsibility to independently represent everyone, you know. So we looked at the altogether of all the plans. And so all this information that we received has been deciphered and broken down, and Dan did a lot of this work so that we could understand it, because I don't have time to do that.
No, understood.
Yeah.
Did we have, so the RFP, though, it did go out to just generally any advisor could have presented and
Yeah, I
responded to the RFP?
Yeah.
But Mr. Jeffries, outside of the New York State plan, he brought us a number of options, but no other financial advisors replied.
No, that's not true. There were actually, there was one company under Empower that was called 457 Consultants.
Okay.
And they brought it to, I think, are they the ones out of Rochester?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were not, local representation.
Okay.
And the other one was, I think Lincoln also had another representative, is that right? No, who was the other one, Empower? Equitable, that's right, Equitable, okay.
And Mr. Jeffries worked with you to analyze their proposals as well as ones that he supplied and the New York State one?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, it was a broad brush of everything.
It does feel a little bit like a conflict of interest to me that we would be relying on Mr. Jeffries to help us to analyze different plans that were brought to the town that were outside the scope of what, like if he was sat down and said, I have these 4 plans, this is the one I like the best. I don't think that we should have been relying on him.
He never said that. He never said he liked this one the best.
Well, he, as a financial advisor, he's recommending the ones that he
We broke it
likes.
down, and between Ann and I and his information, our decision was based on the fact that the fees were competitive and the fact that the stable value was, competitive as well, but that we still would have the personalized service, whether, with him, but he could do that with the other ones too. So it really didn't matter that much, as far as, except for the New York plan, which we actually reached out to them to try to get their fixed rate, and it took them a week to get back to us. So I don't know if that's any indication of the kind of service that we would get from the New York State plan or not, but I know that they won't come running out here if Rob's team says, hey, can you be out here? I want to have you do a presentation.
Right. And one of the things that you and I had spoken about, and I think Elena had also had this question, because as someone in the industry, I know that I get paid to provide a service, and I believe in the work that I do.
Sure.
And so sometimes when you're having conversations about, well, this is the lowest fee product, like you can in fact get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I believe that it's worth hiring an expert and a professional and someone who knows what they're doing, or we can't use the word expert, I apologize to my
It's all right.
dealer.
I know you.
But we believe that we are providing a service and that we as a third party bring value to the table.
Correct.
So I asked you, are the employees happy with the service that we are, with the services that they're receiving? And because if they weren't, then is it not worth the fee at that time?
Oh,
if
I see,
everyone
yeah.
loves what we have and they meet all the time and they're reaping all these benefits, then to me it is worth the value.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in our industry, it's important that we are that we identify like, who is our target market, right? Like who are the clients that are a best fit for us and that we are a best fit for them, and that there is no one individual or one client with whom they can work with everybody. Everyone, the work that I do in my industry is probably very different from the work that you do, and our clients probably have some things in common, but probably not a lot. So
Well, you'd be surprised.
maybe more in common.
I've been at it 44 years. You'd be surprised.
Yes, that's true. So I wanted to make sure that the participants in the 457 that we are helping to sponsor through the town of Manlius, that they were happy.
Yeah.
You had received feedback from the police department,
I received one
from the
email.
union.
I have received one email from a retired officer who has all of his investments in the stable value fund.
Uh-huh.
Right. And I received a call from the president of the PBA, who I think is here tonight behind me. I can't see if Dan's there or not either. And a letter that came from them that they wanted an explanation of everything. And then that's when Dan went out and did the presentation in front to the PBA.
Okay.
So we responded to pretty much everything.
I think that the one issue that I have, or the concern that I have, is that information that you had received would have changed my perspective in the meeting that we had 2 weeks ago. And this is of course my area of expertise. So several of my colleagues here this evening rely on my advice. And so they came to me and said, Caitlin, what is a 457? Like, explain this to us. And so I spoke with you, I evaluated the plans myself. I relied quite a bit on yours and Ann's work and on Mr. Jeffrey's presentation to come to the conclusion that I did, that I felt that was an appropriate decision to make. But
and we did, we reached out to you to meet with us that,
yes,
so that
I was moving into a new house. Yeah, so I was unavailable in the time frame that you had indicated.
That might have been introduced, some of the other information at that time.
But when I asked, are the employees happy? Have you received any feedback? I wish you would have.
Again, those are the only ones. I've talked to Rob. He says they're all very pleased at the highway department. I don't think I've had anyone. I mean, I'm very pleased with it. I'm in the plan. And I don't really use Dan because I don't need to, but not that I wouldn't call him for just a point of reference.
So I heard different feedback from the highway department that their union representative expressed as well, that the participants in the plan were not particularly.
That's not what I heard from the union president. He shared differently with the highway superintendent.
Okay.
They were fine, and they actually didn't really, from what I understand why the PBA was reaching out to them.
Okay.
Because they did not really have issues.
So this is maybe more like a procedural question,
Sure.
But if the supervisor receives a letter addressed to the town board, is it stipulated in some capacity that be shared with us, or is it?
I always try
customary?
to, Caitlin.
I understand, yeah. I just wondered if because it was addressed to the town board and we did not receive it. And that would have been really critical information for me to have had.
I put it with all the RFP stuff in, right? I think that's what we ended up doing for the record, and that's when we reached out to have someone, to have Dan do the presentation to it.
So I think there was just that would have made a difference if we had seen that.
That's true. I think the other thing we have to understand with the 457 and the governmental aspect of it, and it is an employer decision plan based on it's not, the employees, of course they have concern, but it's not their decision.
But it is a fiduciary obligation, a legal obligation to act in the best interest of the beneficiaries.
Which I believe we have.
So I think that their input and their feedback is certainly not democratic. They don't vote.
They were upset. I think I explained, they were upset when we left Nationwide. Because at that time there was a stable value fund, which they mistakenly thought was higher than everything else. But when you throw the wraparound fees in it, it was actually very expensive. And so, and I remember they came to me and they were upset, and I explained to them the process. We had to do this. Nationwide came back with a new quote, actually, and it was still higher than what Mass Mutual and Lincoln.
Would it be okay if we hear from people?
Sure, yeah, if they want to get up there, and who wants to go first?
I just wanted to say
And I still
that
had a lot of talk with Jim already.
before our guests speak, but I know we want to welcome the speakers. I just want to say thank you, Caitlin. I think you laid out clearly the surprise. I think it was night and day our conversation in the last meeting.
What was the surprise?
It was a surprise to hear that it wasn't just the one email that we had received. The person who said, the retired officer who sent you the message individually sent us the message, and that's why we received it. And we addressed it ahead of time. We talked about it. We were inquiring and asked questions because that's our nature to do. So a message that talks about a large number of employees. We asked questions about who uses the plan and who the
Right.
biggest number of people enrolled are our police officers. And so a key piece of information, I just need you to take responsibility for the fact that that was
Well,
a
I
mistake.
did. I took a fiduciary responsibility of sharing that information with the RFP and, and again, if there's an
Sending it
oversight,
to
I
our
apologize,
manager.
for that. But in all, we responded to the letter. We did respond to the letter, and we did have Dan go and do the presentation to explain the whole process of all of the investments, all of the plans, not just one. He went there, explained, and he answered a lot of questions from what I understand.
And you represented the whole board in that move, which is your right to do in a lot of ways, but
Well, and again, I was remiss, not sure what was going on at the time that I got sidetracked, but as you know, 99.9% of the time, I do send you any information I get that is addressed to all
I
of us.
believe that. We had an opportunity, we had a chance to
Yeah, I don't,
reconvene.
I hear what you're saying,
But
but
there
I
are
don't
other times when we don't have a chance to reconvene.
yeah, I don't know if that's really a turning point in this. You may.
That was our experience. I mean, I don't know, you could ask each one of us what our experience was, if you want to.
So you were
if I were-
shocked that I didn't share a letter from the PBA that they wanted to have a better explanation and we sent someone there to do it? Or
I
that I didn't
was,
show that with you?
I think that the surprise came from the fact that it was all of our understanding that everyone was very happy with the plan.
No, we never, no, I don't
I
think we ever
asked-
use those words, everybody's happy with it.
I asked specifically, and I certainly wasn't
But we
recording
knew
our
there
calls,
wasn't,
can't
because
rely on
Karen
it.
even brought up the email, from our retired, that the concern, so we did talk about the fact that someone was,
But this was
Disappointed.
one individual compared to the entire union having
well, I
had a
don't know
vote
if
to
everyone
say
in
that
the
they
union
don't
is
want the
upset
plan.
about
But we
that.
didn't know the key fact that the union had voted on their own view of this.
And
We didn't
I
know that
need this information to be making
Well, it's good if the
decisions.
union controlled the 457, but it doesn't.
But I actually have this question, and this might be helpful at this point in the discussion. On the 457, who are the trustees? Who are the trustees? Who are the true fiduciaries on the plan?
Who are you?
You, either one of you. Yeah, you probably. You. You just like get up and leave.
So Anne's looking it up.
It's not an ERISA plan.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's not an ERISA plan. The town has a fiduciary role, and I would assume supervisor as the head of the town board has a fiduciary role. You and I had spoken about the fact that because I'm a CFP, I'm sworn, regardless of what the papers were, says, I live to a fiduciary standard.
Yeah, I'm curious who is a legal fiduciary on a 457 plan.
I'm a fiduciary to the plan because I'm a RIA relationship, fee-based to the plan, and so I have a fiduciary role to the plan. And again, I'm not entirely sure, but I believe maybe the board, but I believe the supervisor has a fiduciary role as well.
So I'd be curious to find out if I'm a fiduciary and if the other board members are a fiduciary, because we can't be acting in the best interest of the beneficiaries of the plan as fiduciaries if we don't have all the information about what it is that the beneficiaries of the plan are looking for. You can't make that decision in a vacuum. You
No.
have to have feedback. When you're building a plan, you're not just talking to the executive. You have to be hearing about what are the ages of the employees, how much do they make, what are the types of roles they have, what is the level of turnover.
Well, that's
what
if
is-
we were, I think if we were doing a matching type, we'd need that information, but we don't really need that, do we, as a?
Well, again, I'm on the edge of my knowledge, so I don't want to speak to absolutes here. But because it's not ERISA, it's not subject to the same scrutiny, but that's about all I can tell you. You
Right.
know, but I would like to say for the record, I said to when I presented to the BBA, and I said when I presented to this board last time I was here, if the only decision is low cost, and I've made this
Yeah,
really
you did,
clear,
yeah.
Yeah,
then you should go with the New York State
Right.
plan.
yeah, and I
still
absolutely.
stand by my word.
And I reiterated that as well. And I think that that's worth considering, right? Like fees are a big part of a plan and what
They
employees are
certainly
paying.
are.
If they were happy with the fees they were paying because it was justified in the services that they were receiving, I was cool with it. If they're not, then I'm not, and I didn't know, and I'm pretty mad about that.
I
And
think
that's
though,
my
Caitlin,
point.
that they weren't really understanding the fees. I think what their
I think
concern
that
was, now wait, let me
A little
finish
bit
now.
patronizing though.
I think what they felt, and this was always made clear to me, Jim made it clear to me, Brian made it clear to me, it was always about the stable value fund. Because
That's not what I heard.
they don't understand the fees because they never saw the fees.
They
All right,
see
all
fees
they-
when they get a check and it's
Well, that was,
$30.
they removed that. That was eliminated. They stopped that fee. When you started taking for health insurance reasons, they eliminated taking that $30 fee. They canceled that. So they reimbursed, I don't know if they reimbursed, they might have, but I know they did not take those fees any longer. That was corrected. And the stable value, like I said, if that was a driving force, the New York plan certainly isn't that competitive. And there's Lincoln, now that we have the new rates, and actually Emeritus comes out better than any of them.
And I will say too, as one of the board members, it's a learning experience. We know now that when we have something like this, we can go directly to the employees. And this is definitely a one-time thing. It's not like you regularly don't send us correspondence.
Right, yeah.
And I think it's, it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that when we're making these decisions, we do our homework. And yes, what we're doing now though is continuing that conversation and going to hear directly from our employees is,
Sure.
I think we feel we probably should have done sooner.
Well, and again, John, that's why I thought we heard from him when Dan went and made the presentation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but Dan is not a representative of the town. And if he's going and presenting.
But he's worked with the employees though, Kate.
When we are coming upon a decision that we have to be unbiased, sending someone in who categorically can't remove that bias, which is fine. You're a financial advisor, your job's to sell. That's part of the thing. That's part of it. But we should have gone. You and I should have gone as experts in the field.
Yeah.
Again, sorry, not experts,
Well,
I'm sorry.
Financial advisors, yeah.
As people who have an understanding of the mechanics behind these things, sometimes when I'm looking at these plans, I barely understand the fees because they're wrapped up in however much you're charged a year and how much you're charged in a 12B1 fee and how much you're charged in a management fee and how much you're charged in ongoing administrative costs at the.
It's funny you say that because
It's
we
just a nightmare.
actually looked, and I'll get to you guys in a minute. We actually looked at removing the advisor's fee from the stable value to try to, so the rate would still maintain. What the companies do though, is they transfer that decrease and they add it to the expense ratio of the investments that everybody else is in. So we go, that's not such a good idea either.
Right.
So, I mean, we try to do that.
Do you run models of like scenario models looking at, the different ages or whatever,
Oh, yeah.
kind of an right, so that's
Well,
how you.
that's actually on the website
Right,
that they
and-
let you do, that Lincoln does and
You
all
mean
of
like
them
from
do
a
that.
financial planning perspective?
Yeah,
how
just
aggressive-
to think
yeah.
about all the typical scenarios, like a host of very common scenarios and a couple of not common scenarios.
But I think it's important for us to reiterate that all of the money in this plan was contributed by the employee. There
employees.
is no match.
Right,
So
right.
this is their money.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that does change a little bit from when it's a regular corporate plan where there's people,
Right,
where
where
the
we
company
have-
is contributing.
Heather, I'm not sure I completely understand your question.
Well, I was just wondering, I'm just saying, in order to, I'm talking about the process. We can talk about it another time.
No,
but
I think it's a
agree
good
with
question. I just want to make sure I understand.
Well, all I'm saying is, I think that one of the key things that Ed has talked about is this idea that Dan was there to answer questions and to be sort of an educational consultant too, right?
Well,
To be able
because he
to
was-
take
yeah,
someone's
he was working
questions.
with the employees anyway.
Right, and that's one of his skill sets and something he cares about doing. I get it. And I agree that what you're saying is, understanding what role you're playing when you go in to have that conversation and who's representing what hats they're wearing needs to be something we all understand ahead of time. And then,
And I mean, I don't have anything in this game here. I mean, I'm just the supervisor.
Right, I just think
And I'm
that
just
you-
analyzing everything and I'm in the plan, but as far as making the decision, I've narrowed it down to what we felt at that time was the best way to go. It's nothing I'm benefiting from.
We had the gentleman here at the beginning, right, talking about process and when things just aren't a good look.
Yeah.
I don't think sending someone in who has responded to an RFP with their own proposals to go in and explain the proposals. That just doesn't,
I suppose.
it's just not, it's not a good look. And it's not being truly independent. It's not being,
Well, did we send everything to the quote, the RFPs to Dan? And I don't remember if we sent
Dan,
to Dan Terrell. When he,
all the RFPs, no, Dan was in my office, they were available for any.
okay, all right, because they were available.
As the board
Yeah,
members, who
okay.
were also invited to participate and chose not to.
Right. Okay, so that was always there, if, to look at and to analyze them. So,
right,
don't
and
know if they
I
did.
think that, I just don't think that having Mr. Jeffries go and present, I'm not saying that we shouldn't go and read the RFP ourselves, but I don't know why no one called me and said, do you think that someone who's replied to the RFP should go present on the
Yeah,
proposals?
I guess.
That- I mean, how am I
We know
supposed-
that that's not how it functions, and like,
And that's fine,
There was-
but I
there was-
don't
but there-
call,
but
don't
there
say
was
I didn't do
clearly
my
a gap in
job, because that's
communication.
not fair.
there was clearly a gap in communication.
Yeah,
Anybody could have taken a step to,
I mean, we started it in October. We
Yep.
started looking at the
anybody,
process.
any of the responsible parties could have made an effort to have that not happen, and it didn't happen. And I agree that maybe we should have a more in-depth conversation about how things are analyzed and proposed and whatnot. But I think right now, the issue is we felt, some of us, that we didn't have all the information, and we are trying to rectify that by getting some more information and continuing that discussion.
And John, when you emailed me, I didn't know what you were referring to.
Yeah,
until-
absolutely.
Until I go, oh, I
Which
forgot
brings
about that
us
letter,
to-
So, but I mean, again, I'm sorry, Dan. You're being very patient. I appreciate that. But go ahead. I know you wanted to.
Most of you guys know me by now. I've been here for 16 years in the town of Manlius. I'm the new PBA president. I started with Manlius. I've been here. I've been loyal to the park the entire time. The 457 plan came to my attention that it was up for bid in March, which is kind of, again, disconcerting now that I know that it started in October. We were never said, hey, by the way, we're looking at this again. If you guys want any input on it.
Well, a year ago, Dan, just so you know, we did say that we had to revisit it, but because of COVID, should have been done last year, because this is in our 6th year now.
Right.
So in our board meeting, we did say that we were going to revisit this year.
So perhaps we
as
could
soon
be more
as-
intentional
As soon as the
about
union was made
communicating.
aware of the fact, 457 plan was again out for bid, going out for bid, I wrote that letter, which I dropped off at your office.
Right,
Personally addressed
right.
the town of Manlius board.
Yeah, and then
So you
yeah.
get the board to get a copy of the letter, knowing that, and you have a copy of the letter as well.
Yep.
That we were asking to be included in the decision process for who was going to be represented for the 457 plan. Previously, when it switched from Nationwide and went to Lincoln, it was a complete surprise, what you said a minute ago. The union was completely unaware of it ahead of time, and again, if it started in October and March, and it wasn't you that contacted me, I'm not exactly sure. It was third-party knowledge. I found out that it was up for bid, I think probably from Brian Ackerman, because he keeps track of that
I
stuff.
think we went out to bid in February or March was when we went out to bid. Right?
So I came back here, I wrote the letter, I stopped at your office.
Yep.
I did talk to Ann, because you weren't here, your
Yep.
secretary Kate told me to go down and talk to her.
Mhm.
She told me who had been solicited or responded on the RFP.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the last communication we had on it. Like I said, the union wanted to be included as to
Well, that wasn't the
who
last.
it
I
was,
thought
Yeah.
what the
And
benefits
can you let
were,
him speak?
the analysis on it. We wanted to go through the numbers because, as it's been pointed out, this is our money. It's not the town's money. Every dime in the plan has come from the union's pocket. Comes out of my paycheck every week, goes into my plan. Comes out of his paycheck and every member of the union's plan. To portray the fact that every single union member is satisfied with the service we're getting and we're happy with fees we're being charged is not accurate. When Dan came out, and this is nothing against Dan, I've known Dan for years, his kids and my kids went to school together.
Yep.
Dan's a great guy, his wife Patty's a great woman, I have no problem with Dan personally, never have. Okay. My issue is with the fees being charged with Lincoln Financial, and it's the same issue with many of our retirees, along with many of our current members that are participating in the plan. When Dan came in and presented to the union, we don't vote in the presence of somebody who's not in the union, obviously. We voted at that meeting. However, not everybody in the union was at that meeting. I took it upon myself to reach out to every single member of the union, whether or not they participate in the plan or not. And every single member of the PBA is not satisfied with Lincoln Financial's representation for 457 plan, based upon the fees and the service we get for those fees. Every single member.
So quick question.
Sure.
They were disappointed with the performance of the funds and
They're
how they
disappointed
did
with the
with
amount of fees that are being paid in response to the services that are being received.
I don't know how to equate that. How do you equate that?
How do you equate that?
I mean, did
When,
they get
if-
calls
when at the
from him?
beginning of
I
the
just
year, you're
wondered.
paying a 0.5% interest rate on every single thing in your account. When the state plan charges a 0.05% interest rate, which is 1/10 the amount, it's significant. If I take and I pay $1,700 a year in fees, if I were to keep that $1,700 a year in fees in my account over 10 years, I've got another 28 grand in my account when I retire, if I get like a 6% return. That's a lot of fees.
You really saw those fees? I never look at those fees. Because I look at,
Apparently, a lot of
I mean,
people
I'm
do
just,
look at
I'm
those
just, I
fees,
just,
but those
I'm
are
kind of
the
curious.
fees that are being paid.
Yeah.
Jim Gallup, who's the secretary for the union, has a lot more than he can add to that.
Sure, go ahead.
So- I wrote up a lot of stuff here, and I don't think it's appropriate to kind of read off because it can be taken the wrong way. Ultimately, I heard a couple of things on my way up here today that caused me a little bit more concern than when I first kind of walked up here. You have to understand, first of all, who we are. We're police officers, right? We're inquisitive, suspicious people. I don't trust anyone. Okay, that's my job. I trust what I see in facts. That's my job. That's what you guys pay me to do. That's what the citizens pay me to do. So when I ask questions and those questions are not being answered and or not to our satisfactory standard, not saying Dan didn't do that, okay? We're going to ask, we're going to send a letter to the town. Hey, listen, this did change back in the day, 8 years ago, wasn't it?
Yes.
6 years ago. Everyone at the time was happy with Nationwide. We went to Lincoln. We had no input. I was a younger guy then, and I just shut my mouth. Do your job. Well, they have the choice. It's the employer-sponsored plan. You don't get a choice. Now, as a younger guy who had been contributing to this all along, thank God, Kevin Berry, God rest his soul, actually made me sign up for it, whether that's legal or not. I thank him every day for that. So the first 10, 12, 14 years of my career here, I did nothing but encourage the younger guys who followed after me. You need to contribute to this. I don't care if you eat ramen noodles and spaghetti every day. Put it to the breaking point, okay? It's only gonna help. The enrollment factor based on senior input into younger officers grossly dwarfs Dan coming to the meetings and saying, hey, we want you to sign up. I'm telling you myself, Dan, the other senior officers who are still left there, are enrolling multiples, more people in the plan than any person coming and talking to the meeting because they trust us. They don't trust you. They don't know you.
Yeah.
Okay? That's our nature. Okay? That's nothing personal. So when we switched, we weren't given the input. You're right, Ed, there were a lot of people in the union who were upset about that. Now, fast forward that today's date is not fair. There's 3 of those people left in the entire department. It's a very young department. So that past bad taste in their mouth has no bearing on where this is now. You just heard it, so 100% vote. Now, yes, cops like to look at facts. The fees, for example, I can tell you personally. I can't speak for other people because most people don't contribute as much as I do. Most people have smaller contributions. They pay $300, $400 a year. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the state plan and go, the max you pay is $80 a year. I don't care if you have $1,000 or $1 million. You pay $80 a year. Hence the letter to Ed and to the town board saying, this doesn't make sense to us. Come talk to us. Okay. Dan did come and talk to us. Extensive amount of work he did. Did a lot of work. I'm assuming the work he gave us, when was that meeting?
April?
6th of May.
March, I think. May?
6th of May, Dan came and gave us all of the information. His comparison of all the plans. It was a massive amount of work, and I thank Dan for doing it. At the end, we do take a vote. In the end of it, the union membership still decided we would rather have the lower fees. Dan's added value was for other consultation in 457 and other plans, college savings, things like that is what he told me about. In the end, I can speak for myself in this particular fact. I'm not paying for Dan to counsel you on your college savings account. I'm paying for Dan to counsel me on my 457 account. I'm not supplementing through my fees, you being a consultant on something that you're not. Now, that's not anything personal against Dan. Dan does bring value to the table, and the $14,000 a year that he makes from this might very well be underpaid. I don't know how much work he does. I don't know your world. But I know value based on what I'm paying for. What I'm paying for, when I can pay $80 a year as opposed to $1,700, I think at least, Dan, if you can help me, the police department, I'm assuming, is the lion's share of the 457. Are we talking 75%? The balance?
60%.
And the balance is right around 4?
Yes.
Okay,
The balance is, what, what do you mean?
4 million, I think is the account, I believe.
The
Don't-
overall
I was just writing how much
Well,
money
there's
is currently.
3.9 million in the town plan right now. right?
How much?
Now-
3.9 million?
Excuse me, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes,
It has grown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's just about 4 million.
4 million, okay, and 47 employees and averages 185,000 a year.
If 60% of that, which I think might be a little low, but you know the numbers better than I do, belongs to the police department, I think that buys us a seat at the table. We're all adults, we can make our decision of where our money goes. When I hear things like it's an employer-sponsored plan, it's not their fault, it's not their choice, that upsets me. Because there are 6 people right now, myself included, who are going to pull our money out of the plan if it stays with Lincoln. That represents 25% of the total balance right now, roughly $1.1 million. 6 people gone. Now, is that against Dan? No, it's not. No one has anything personal against Dan. It's just, if I'm going to go to the doctor's office, I need to be able to trust the doctor. If I'm trusting the vast majority of my income with somebody or with the town or with an entity, I need to be able to trust them. I don't feel I have that trust right now. I wasn't even brought to the table, being given an opportunity to talk about it. It's not me. I'm speaking for 30 union members. I can't speak for the DPW. I haven't personally talked to them. I know Dan has had conversations with them. I don't think the union as the police department is comfortable in speaking for the DPW. You have to speak with them directly. But I do know from my perspective, now perspective is known for not being accurate. From my perspective, I've seen a decline in the number of people who contribute heavily on the police department side. Now, Dan knows the numbers. He knows whether that's true or not. I'm just being based off of my perspective. And I think a lot of that comes into the fact that we did change 6 years ago. It's a very tough thing for suspicious and inquisitive people, personalities, to be told, you don't have an option of where your money goes. Are you going to continue to participate in that plan? Probably not. It's a human being trait. It's just common sense. Just to be, I think we've earned at least a seat at the table to express what we want to do. I do know that when I reached out to New York State, because in speaking with Dan, I did ask him. And Dan, I was on FaceTime or Zoom or something like that. I don't know if you remember. I asked him, what is your value added? What am I paying extra for? And he explained those things. Well, that's something I personally don't take advantage of. So me personally, why am I paying for that? If I wanted that service, I would go somewhere and I would pay for that. Again, it's nothing personal against Dan. The blatant choice to me is New York State plan. So I called New York State the other day, and the program director, Patrick Ray, was very confused. He said, yes, we do have personal representation. Your guy's right in Utica. If you call him today, he will be at your office tomorrow. And if he's not, you can call. They actually have people like Ed, like yourself, who are financial people, whatever your credentials are. Sorry.
I'll take financial people.
Well,
We're not experts.
Not expert.
I was staying away from that. That from 9 to 5 have and possess the same qualifications, will answer the phone from 9 to 5. Now for transactions, say you have someone like Dan, who's in need of glasses and hearing aids, who is not very good with computers, can call from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. to process any of these transactions. It's just as accessible as reaching out to Dan, because I can go to the website, I can call Dan. If Dan's not there, I know I can call them directly. All the same aspects are there for me. But this is just coming from the director of New York State. Now, whether or not that's the best choice, I'm not a numbers person. That's what I'm looking to you guys for, especially someone like yourself. But when New York State Deferred Comp comes back and says the city of Syracuse, Elbridge, Geddes, Lafayette, Lysander, Onondaga, Salina, Spafford, Van Buren, Camillus, Jordan, Liverpool, North Syracuse, Skaneateles, Solvay, Baldwinsville, and Tully are all part of the New York State plan. And I talked to a couple of people who responded to the RFPs, and I said, well, New York State put a bid, and one of their exact words were, oh, well, the game's over, they got it, they always get it. There has to be a reason why. Hence the reason why we wanted to know why. We wanted to be brought into the fold, why we wanted to be exposed to this information. Again, that's the type of people we are. That's all we're asking for, is a seat at the table to determine where our money goes. I don't think it's that much of an ask. I'm not trying to sound accusatory. I've known Dan for 6 years now, and he's never not gotten back to me. If he didn't know the answer to a question, he got a hold of Lincoln directly. Anytime I have an issue with Lincoln, believe it or not, and usually solves it. So, as far as what plan, I'm not pushing one plan or the other, but to me, from an uneducated financial planner kind of person, the choice is obvious. And I think the rest of the union says the choice is obvious. If I'm paying for a product, I got to understand that there's value there that I accept. I'm not going to go buy a brand new Corvette when I can't go grocery shopping unless I have another car to purchase. I'm not using these things. The rest of the union is majority of the time not using these things, or at least to the level where they feel that the value is worth it. Again, that's just the police department, but I think we are the lion's share of the fund.
Jim, let me ask you a quick question, because one of the motivating factors that we kept looking at was the stable value rate. And at that time, the rates were all like around 1.8, 1.7, whatever, you know. So we got up-to-date rates, and we went back to a couple of companies to try to get better rates, you know, with reducing fees. And I mean, so how important is that? Because, like, for example, the New York State is 1.71 right now, and the emeritus rate is at 3.5 less. The record keeping and advisor fee of 80 basis points is still 2.7. Does that matter to you guys or not?
And where you're coming from, I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I've known you for 25 years.
Right.
You're coming from 6 years ago. What's changed in 6 years? These guys are no longer, and these girls are no longer in tier 2 in the retirement plan. They're tier 6 and 7.
Yeah.
They're not working in 20 years. It's not happening. So they're not going to retire and just put it in stable value. That was the old way of thinking.
Yeah.
They've done what you guys have suggested we do. Keep it invested. Let it grow. Let it grow. Don't touch it. Keep it invested. Let it grow. No one's doing that stable value transition. Now, the retired people currently, you're not changing their minds.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to stay in stable value.
Yeah.
I'm not a financial person. I handle my own stuff because naturally, I've been out for 20 years. I don't trust anyone.
And well, that was my point. I mean, Caitlin, I'm in the plan. Well, there's a reason I went to the plan at the time, and I just keep adding to it. And of course, being familiar with the fees, you know, it didn't have a bearing when I was looking at the rate of return I was getting on my investments, you know, or the return of my money instead of the, you know, return on my money type thing. And so, do you look at that? I mean, do you look at how well your funds are doing, and are you pleased with that, or are the fees that important when you're doing so well with the return on your funds?
The fees are hugely important because you have to understand it may not be necessarily, I hate to put it this way because I don't know another way to put it, may not necessarily be the factual basis, it's the perception. Perception is reality. Perception is they're being overcharged.
Yeah.
You're not going to change someone's mind when they're looking at a $1,700 or $2,000 bill, or for most people, probably $400 to $500 a year, when you tell them it could be 80.
And I'm looking at the investment options for the New York State plan, and I'm sure that they are extremely comparable to what's offered in most other countries.
Yeah, I looked at them, and they have some good funds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that.
Well, they all have some, you know, good funds.
I think that I think that if the question is, it's not like this, that the Lincoln or the Empower or anyone else is offering just like the most incredible selection of funds that are an outperformer.
Right.
I think that they're probably all extremely comparable. A large cap growth fund is a large cap growth fund, no matter who you're working with.
Right.
When you're buying the 457, you're buying the package. You're buying all the bells and whistles or lack thereof. And I think that what we're hearing is that they would prefer the lack thereof just the straight investment option selection.
I
seems to
do
be the feedback.
worry a little bit, and I get where you guys are coming from. Jim, you and I had a long
John also
talk.
had his
I'm sorry,
hand
John.
I
Go ahead.
just have a question.
Yeah, go
Because I
ahead.
don't, again, we're not the finance people. So.
I have worked in a place where I've contributed, but don't just like draw the line here.
Listen, so what I'm hearing is that the younger guys and girls, or younger men and women, of
Thank
course,
you.
Oh, boy.
are using the more, I'll just say, interesting options that are presented to them when they're investing their money.
It used to be when I can only speak out of personal experience. When I first started here, had that individual not slid a piece of paper across the table to me, and I hate that this is being recorded in public, but and said, sign here. Thank God he did. Again,
A lot of plans now are opt out.
Right.
So that's
Should
like, it's, yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Increasing participation in the plan is, should be a top priority.
That's a tough position.
Yeah, I just
But
want
as
to
far
make
as
sure.
now, they are doing other things. We've had police officers that have left to move on to your job. That individual took several people with him.
Oh, I remember him.
Wait, he became a financial advisor?
Yeah.
So
Oh, Mass Mutual.
he took several people with him, and he's actually stolen a lot of other town employees.
Yeah.
Because to most people, it's not about it's like a doctor, it's not about what the number is. It's about what's the number and do I trust this process? It's really hard to trust the process, and it's really hard to trust the situation when it's not really your choice.
So it's a kind of a two-part thing.
Did you have a question?
So I
Yeah,
thank you
yeah,
for
so
everything.
I guess my real question is, do you, either of you, first off, if you're not comfortable representing, other people's views, feel free to say, but do you, either of you feel that the state plan would negatively impact some of the people who are using the more complicated, in products?
Yeah.
The product is the same or comparable. Because at the end of the day, the 457 is meant to provide an opportunity to defer your compensation that you earn from your salary into mutual funds to get invested in the stock market and might grow. And the point that this gentleman made is that without the pensions being as
Generous?
Thank you, that's exactly what I was looking for, as they used to be, people are finding themselves needing to contribute more themselves to plans and grow their money in the stock market such that they might be able to retire and meet their retirement goals. But at the end of the day, it's the most important element of this is just deferring your money and getting it invested.
Right,
And they're
right.
in a target date fund. I know we kind of ragged on those a little bit. They can be, if it just goes in the target date fund and you're a 26-year-old cop or working for the highway department and your money is just getting in there and it's getting invested, that's what the plan is meant to do. Financial advisors are responsible for picking the fund lineup and making sure that those funds are that you have a well-diversified selection, that everyone has the types of options that legally you as a fiduciary are required to provide. But the financial planning, this is, if you want to retire in 30 years, what I'm hearing is that they can get those services if they call this individual in Utica, and that most of them are not using the financial planning services. And folks like me, and I'm assuming Ed, a lot of financial advisors, if you want to sit down and have a financial plan, how much should you put in a 529 plan for college? Do you need life insurance? Like, what about an estate plan? There's, what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that those who want those services can go procure those independently of the plan, that they don't feel that they need to be paying for those within the plan.
And that was
Do you agree
actually,
with that general?
that was a concern of mine too.
Do you agree with the general
With
consensus there of that
distilling down of it.
folks wouldn't feel like something's been taken away because they know that they could get it on their own if they desired it?
20 years ago, I'm sorry, what? No, 20 years ago, I couldn't pick up my phone and purchase 3 Bitcoin.
Okay.
20 years ago, I couldn't ask these questions and have an answer in 2 seconds. I would have to go to someone, or to Ed, or to Dan. These kids are not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. One of the guys who works for me at my other employment just cashed out $40,000 in some crypto.
Oh,
I don't know
God.
what the heck he's doing. Now, would I suggest against doing that? From what I know and from what Dan told me over there, don't do that stuff.
Yeah, right.
But if they have a plan that is available to them through the town that they can trust and that they feel they have buy-in, that they feel that they have a choice of where their money is going, they're more apt to choose what, in my opinion, is probably the safer option as opposed to a Robinhood app on their phone. And for me, I'm on my way out. My job is to hopefully get at least one or two of these guys and girls who are going to contribute, like I should have from the beginning. I kept my contributions very low in the beginning, and it negatively affected me. But now I'm trying to catch up, and it almost feels like because you are doing what you're supposed to do, the higher balance you have, the higher fee you pay, it's almost like a negative. Well, I'd rather just go with a flat fee from the state or take my money out and put it somewhere else.
Jim, one thing I just wanted to, a couple of the concerns that we had was, I mean, I get the 60 or 65% against, but I'm concerned about that other 35 or 40 that rely, and I'm not going to say, I'm not saying none of the fire or the police department used
there are
services, because I know they have, but I worry about those that now they're going to have to pick up the phone and dial an 800 number, which, and maybe you got more information than I did, but I understood that they had one representative that had 10 county territory. It consists of 40 state agencies and 100 local municipalities that would be servicing our accounts here in Manlius. I mean, did you hear differently than that?
I did. Actually, the representative's name is Dan Kane. I have his number.
Yeah, we have his name, yeah.
He's right in Utica. He does represent multiple agencies.
Yeah.
But his response time, according to the program director, which admittedly, I don't trust anyone, is 24 hours. He will be there face-to-face to you 24 hours unless he's on vacation. And if it's an emergency, he can't get to you face-to-face, or he's on emergency, you call that 9 to 5 number where you have access to someone with the same qualifications and the same access to the plan as him, basically another Dan or another.
Yeah, well, we would, and that was where we were going with this at our last meeting was, we were really reaching for the local service representation that we've had for years, and that's one of the reasons that we discussed keeping it a local representative, and then it came down to which program seemed to be the best for that, and it really came down to I think Lincoln and Emeritus. But it was sort of like 6 years ago. But it came down to, well, to jump through all these hoops, to transfer everything over, is that worth doing all of that for just a few differences in fees and so on? And I think that, that's one of the reasons we decided to stay where we were,
So I
and
guess
again, there was
that question. Would people be, from your knowledge, would people be upset about a transition?
I think one of the things that I can't speak for everybody, and I would gladly put that out to a poll, or Dan would put that out to a poll of membership. But you have to understand we're in changing times. I'm not going to ask anyone here that I'm 40. These young guys and girls.
How old are you?
You're
not bad.
I'm the oldest guy.
I call them kids, I shouldn't, but these kids, they don't need to talk to someone face to face. Their entire life has been on the phone. They prefer phone contact. They prefer getting on the computer and handling it themselves. It is not a negative aspect for them. But I'm only speaking for the police department because we are so young. We do have such
Right.
Some of our senior members, we all know who they are. Couldn't turn on the computer if they tried, but that's a minority compared to the majority.
And I think that it's certainly with my experience with providing services to defined contribution plans, the financial advisors only out there to meet in person once or twice a year. It's not like and we have dozens of other clients that we're responsible for. It's not like we just work with one.
Right. And it depends on what you're focused on. I mean, like I do everything.
I do everything.
But I know that some people just do 401k, some people just
So
do.
where do you want to go from here? Thanks, Sarah. So should we inquire if the town hall and highway employees would be disrupted by a disruption?
Well, if we're hearing from the PBA, we should reach out to, go ahead, Ann. Are we under a time commitment?
By the end of the month, we don't have that much time.
By the end of this month?
Yeah.
everything has to change over, so
And how long does that take to change everything?
it's been done, whoever the new provider is, and it's a lot of work.
It takes about, I think, once you make the decision, it's about a 60-day.
Yeah.
It's a
Process. Yeah, Dan.
It's a 60 to 90-day process. I did check with your current vendor, Lincoln.
Yep.
And at the end of this month, your stable value guaranteed account goes away, but it'll still stay in a money market protected manner. It won't be as high of a crediting rate as it is, but we're significantly, it wasn't, whatever it was, 2 in December, and it's now at 1.6. My guess is it'll go to the guaranteed rate of 1
Yeah,
if you don't make a decision.
right.
You'll go into a blackout period, so for people that are, there's a time frame where you can't touch the money.
Yeah.
But again, in my fiduciary role, my contribution to the town as a citizen of the town, if that's what the town chooses and that's in the best interest of the employees, there'll be a little bit of an inconvenience to move it over, but that happens with moving it regardless.
And that would be something that whoever the vendor is we choose would go through that process.
They will facilitate it, they'll map people over, and again, the employees won't be harmed by that process. But for anybody who needs to get at their money, it could be a little bit of a delay. But at the end of the process, if that's the way the town chooses to go, I would tell everybody here, count on 90 days. I think that that's realistic, so that no one gets a false expectation. And again, I did check with Lincoln. At the end of June, the stable value expires, goes into it'll sit in a money market type of account. And then as you make a decision, you can leave it there for as long as you need to. And for those people that are invested, they'll stay invested till the transition. Again, blackouts supposedly 30 days. That means you can't touch your money. And again, 457, I'm not as familiar with how long it takes, but I'm going to tell you it probably takes a week or 2. And that's to make sure that Jim Gallup's money goes from Lincoln's Jim Gallup's money to whatever the new vendor is, Jim Gallup, and it doesn't get combined with Dan's money.
And they map it over so that the investments are comparable. So like if you were aggressively invested or conservatively invested, they'll mimic it to the best of their ability in the new investment selection.
So if we made that decision tonight.
No, I think we have to reach out to everyone.
But yeah, I mean, you can go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, my question was, if we made the decision tonight, or whenever we make it, do our employees have time to be like, oh, I'm not okay with this, and then take out their money?
Well,
They don't take it
They don't really
take it out.
They're not gonna take their money out.
No. It's
They would move it.
It's transferred over.
Okay, so they have time
decide
to
where
move.
to-
Oh, yeah, we make sure.
They don't have to do
Automatically
anything.
done for them.
So they either don't have to do anything, or if they're not happy,
They can take their money out.
but they're already
move it to an
saying
IRA.
potentially that that's gonna happen.
Are they able to move their money into an IRA?
Not
My
necessarily.
understanding was that
Oh,
you couldn't do it during the,
I misspoke, not to have a break in service.
yeah, they have to have a break in service before they can roll out their money into an IRA.
So we would need an info, so we need to talk to the highway department as well. Have the same kind of, make sure we have clarity, and then we need an info sheet of some
To
sort.
tell them like.
Yeah, to say, here's, just so everybody is.
But I think there's
We got
7
plenty
people
here
who
to-
need 7 info sheets.
We can even use a PBA letter.
We would have to be doing this in the next few days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we would need to be doing that because of, it's a break in the plan.
Yeah.
So we would actually have to go to everybody, get their opinion, and share it with everybody in time for the next meeting where we can make a decision.
And we could say that the police thought one way, but everybody else feels the other way, or not. And
Yeah,
just
right,
know
pretty much,
the facts.
I mean, it's different.
Okay, so
And then,
for purposes of cleaning up,
Yes.
I think what would be appropriate at this point is a motion to withdraw the approval from the last board meeting until additional information is provided to make a determination, hopefully at the next board meeting.
What if, I'm just throwing it out here, what if the decision at the end is
So
do
you
what
make
we
that
did?
motion at the next
We just
meeting.
go back to what we did. If
Right.
that's- Okay,
So do we have to the end of June though to really make some decisions?
yeah, it sounds that way.
We have
It's
to-
cutting it really close.
It's cutting it really close, yeah.
It's only in the stable value fund. It's
So
just,
the others don't.
Yeah.
Nothing matter.
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I'll double check.
All right, so only the stable values.
And it'll go to a money market, which, you know, money's only worth.
And that wouldn't cause major issues, understanding that, you know,
Mr. Anderson wouldn't like it.
There is one
it's a
individual
complicated
with,
process, it'll take some time. And it won't
Yeah.
immediately happen if we go do the due diligence of talking to the rest of the employees.
I think that's what we're asking for.
Yeah.
It's just to be at the table.
Yep.
And I mean, to say people weren't happy was, some people were more unhappy than others, and I'm assuming I know who sent that email. But the sentiment is probably shared on the same level as multiple people. Cops don't like to be told what they can do with their own money.
Okay.
Nor does most other people.
so do you feel now that you were invited to speak and that you were
I
able to
appreciate
share? Do
Yeah.
you think that?
I can speak for me personally, yeah, absolutely, very much.
Okay, and I think one thing that I'd be happy to do is to come and speak to the police department, or to the union membership, if anyone's interested, and kind of explain from a true independent third party what is happening and why, and get questions answered, get feedback, and I'd be happy to go
There'll
to
be
the
time for
highway.
that after we talk to all the other employees.
Yeah, I'm saying in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
As
And
we
you know,
go
I
through the
think
process.
Union meetings until July 1st.
And I-
Yeah, I'd be happy to come in to just kind of go over what we're doing here.
Yeah. Caitlin, I think that we could probably work out something with the highway through Rob too. Maybe you
Yeah.
and me and one other.
I
person.
mean, I did talk to Rob this morning about it.
Thank you.
And Tommy
There's no
Anderson is a
feedback.
union
He
president as well.
was not aware that people were unhappy with it.
No, that's what he said to me. So-
Okay, let's make a motion then to withdraw
To
the,
withdraw the motion
From
from
last
May 26, 2021.
Yep.
That to adopt the plan presented with Best Times Financial and maintaining the current plan with Lincoln Financial until further information is collected by the town board.
You want me to repeat all of that right now?
I think what
Heather's
he
making
said,
it.
you can just say so moved.
okay,
Heather
I
made
make
it.
that motion.
Heather made it, you can second it.
You-
Okay, I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. very good.
And the second option, of course, is hold a special meeting if
Yes.
we
Yeah,
have
we can
we
do
may
that.
need to do
we
that.
have
We know
a,
how to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, we can do whatever.
No, I mean, Zoom makes it so easy.
Okay.
you.
All
Thank
right,
you very
moving
much.
right along, family, let's continue on.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys, for coming in.
All right.
I'm Rob tonight.
Hi, Rob.
You're Rob, yes.
How's the
Highway
highway?
Superintendent.
I promised Rob
Allison.
that I would
Yeah.
say his stuff.
Very good.
So, Rob would like everyone to know that there has been a notice of a bridge closure on Kirkville Road, the Kirkville Road Bridge, the Kirkville Road Bridge. Onondaga County DOT will be closing it over Limestone Creek between Sheps Corner Road and North Manlius Road after the 4th of July for repairs. Detours will be posted, and they're hoping the project will be complete before school starts. We have been preparing to actively share that information on our website, social media, and get all of that information out there.
Okay,
And there was also a speed reduction.
yeah. It hasn't been posted yet, I know
It
that.
has not been posted.
No.
Rob was very clear that he will not be doing the posting of the speed reduction, that this will be done by the state.
State, yeah.
So we'll be sharing information on the speed reduction once the signage is put up, but not before. And it'll be reduced 35 miles per hour on Route 290 between Bowman Road and 0.450 feet east of Clemens Road for 1.23 miles. So we have John
To
made
the
a
creek, I think. is what
yeah,
it said.
John made a map, so you can
Yeah.
kind of see where the speed reduction will be, and you can reference that.
I sort of like that, because I do run that road.
Is it
Well, that's it, we just figured
45?
the map's the easiest way to tell.
Is it
Yeah.
45 down to 35?
Yeah, no, it's 55.
Down to
Yeah.
30.
Oh my
Because
gosh, that's so good.
That's 290.
Yeah, you come- yeah.
Hooks to 257 to
Didn't
Green
we-
Ridge Road.
Okay.
It's that one little gap from Clemens to,
Yeah.
Oh,
The canal.
great, thank you.
I like it better trying to
That's
come
all
out of
Rob
Manoa
has.
Road too.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rob.
All right, thanks, Rob, Allison. Okay, planning and development, we don't really have anything there yet, you know, okay. All right, Tim?
two things, just for the record. The 30-day permissive referendum timeframe is run on the lease for the landfill, and we have not gotten any petition for that, so we're free to enter into the lease and move forward, if you recall. We can do that.
Tim, you're kind of quiet. I don't know if people can hear you right now, as I can barely hear you right now.
What do we do with the lease? Do we have to?
No, nothing.
Nothing, just.
You heard
There was no
it was the
petition.
landfill lease permissive referendum dates have run out, yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Just repeating for
The
the,
30 days
Go to the order.
have run out,
Yeah.
so, and we did not get a petition. So therefore, we're free to enter into the lease and.
Yep. Good.
The second issue is we need to go into executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person or a corporation or matters related to the employment of a particular person or corporation. When we're done.
Fun times.
Someone's gonna have to make that motion.
What if none of us make the motion?
And, anything else?
No, that's it.
Good. Allison, now you're Allison?
Now I'm myself.
Yeah, good.
I have submitted,
Oh, yeah.
hopefully for approval at the next board meeting,
Yep.
some changes to the rules of decorum. It's clear that we are going to be continuing with the hybrid model. We had actually several attendees in this meeting. We whittled it down to 5, but we started with, I think, 17.
Wow. Okay.
So that was good, and we're obviously constantly trying to improve the process, and we are constantly trying to communicate. I had received feedback from some residents that they weren't sure how to participate, just because we were kind of, the thing that, they like to say now is like learning to fly the airplane while it's flying. So we have put some information out about that, just to, and we're gonna continue to do that and continue to make it clearer to everybody how to participate. But some feedback that I had received from several different places is that they want, having to do with the virtual participation and registration and how that takes place and being able to report officially in the minutes. I think the intention of the hybrid meeting environment would be that virtually you would be having the same experience as you would in person.
Right.
If you were in person, we would require you to say, I am such and such and I live at this address. It became abundantly clear to me during the Salt Springs process that people really do want to know, you're speaking about where you live and what part of the district you live in or what part of the town you live in. And so I updated the rules of decorum.
Yep.
And, it just references both in person and virtual. I kind of grabbed some language. This is posted on our agenda. And I wanted to give everybody time to review it and to digest it. And the planning board, I spoke with Lisa. I will actually be at the planning board meeting, so I'll let them know that this is likely changing, and hopefully we can adopt it at the next meeting. And we'll just have to communicate with the people who are participating that way we can just have their names, first and last name, when they sign in.
Right, okay. Good.
May I say one other thing about feedback is I think we are always improving this, but the sound quality is still somewhat of question, and we need to continue to work on it.
Yes, and one thing I wanted to add about sound quality, and I never want to say it is the end user that needs to adjust. So I commit that we will always be trying to improve. I did notice personally myself, when I was trying to listen to the meeting off my laptop, the internal speaker, I could not hear anything. But if I was to open my cell phone up and turn the volume up, I could hear much better. And I don't know why that is. I'm assuming it has something to do with the quality of these speakers versus, and the feedback of the room and the quality of the speakers. Now, I don't think that our goal as government should ever be to say, well, this is, you improve your speakers, so we're gonna keep working on that. But I just wanna offer that as a piece of advice, that if you are having trouble hearing, you do try it on other devices. I know that as the clerks in our office have been reviewing minutes, they've had different experiences using different headphones and things like that. So, but we'll keep trying and.
So Allison,
and we'll keep trying to speak up.
Yeah.
And the rules of decorum then, we try to wrap that up at the next meeting.
Yep,
then?
I distributed them to to the town board by email, and then they're also posted within this agenda. And because it will be on next time, we'll just go ahead and put that right into the next agenda. so that it's available for anybody who wants to review or comment. And then obviously, if anybody has any feedback, things they think I should add or take away, you know.
I just will, to the point of the sound quality, so this has been a process that we've been working on for a while. When we went and looked for high quality microphones, it was gonna cost a significant amount of money. And we opted not to take that route. So we found an option that is affordable. And we are, I think the best way to explain the hybrid experience is we are doing something that is not required of us, that has been asked for, and that we want to do to the best of our abilities. So if there's feedback, please send it to us, use the comment form online, let us know what the feedback is, because in order to improve this quality, other than us all, sitting literally 3 feet from the owl, it's gonna cost money, and we need people to say, I want the town to spend money on better audiovisual equipment, because this is, we have satisfied the notion of live streaming a meeting. Yes, it can absolutely be better, and we're gonna try to make it better, but we need buy-in from folks to say, if you want it to be noticeably better, we need to know that the town is in favor of us spending money.
Okay.
And if there are specific people here who you're having difficulty hearing what they're saying, you can let us know. We won't take it personally. I scream, so I'm confident it's not me. But if one of my colleagues here is
And I mean, like, just to show improvement, the last time we heard that it was frustrating that you couldn't see who was talking, I did some research, and it's doing a significantly better job this time. It was even trying.
I'm like getting seasick.
This owl is like.
Yeah, listen, it's trying its best.
There's a delay with your lips and the sound there.
Yeah. So just understand, like, we're trying our best, but if this is a real value add and it's important to folks, and it is, it's accessibility. This is exactly what governments are supposed to be doing, is making ourselves more accessible. But we need the buy-in from residents to say, spend more money on this.
Is there closed captioning available on this?
YouTube provides that. If you watch it live on Facebook, it is also provided there as well.
Thanks, Allison.
And like right off the bat, one of the simplest things we could do is you can use 2 of these devices at one time. So we could have one at either end of the table. We could buy a table that fits this a little better. There's options.
Well, this is our normal distance, isn't it, anyway?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I like this room setup a lot better too. I feel like it's cute without
I just don't know who's coming in behind you. That's
a little nerve-wracking. Watch up there.
Yeah, watch it up there. It's too late by then. All right, very good. All right, and we'll move on. Well, I know the chief, I don't think he was able to make it tonight, Ann. Okay, very good, thank you. And now that we're on the town manager, nothing, okay. Committee reports, all I had was committee reports.
I have.
I know you have one. Who wants to go first?
Can everybody wait just 1 second, because we picked 9 instead of 10.
And it ended.
Oh, no.
I love how we were just talking
So I
about
just hit the play button now?
Part 2.
Oh, boy.
I mean, it really.
We were optimistic.
We should have known
Yeah, we
better,
could set up
right?
another broadcast, or we could accept that
Now that we're in person again, my kids can't just put themselves to bed at their bedtime.
And no cats jumping
That's
around
right.
there either.
That I don't miss.
Participants in the room.
Insufferable.
Live streaming is not.
You know what we'll do?
Are we back on?
I'll take the recording, I'll trim it to what was missed by the broadcast, and
Oh.
I'll just post it on YouTube and Facebook.
Oh, so the broadcast, but this is still on here.
Do you want to explain what just?
Yeah, so basically, if you're watching as an attendee, or if you're watching after this has been edited, we're gonna take from when the broadcast ended at 9, and we have the recording on Zoom, so we will take that video and post it on all of our normal outlets. We do apologize if you're watching at home.
Good, all right, very good. So
Now
now
So
we're
now we
ready.
know to set it for longer.
Set it for 10 o'clock every time, guys. Let's do it.
No, midnight.
Oh, well, listen, we all have the
Come on.
responsibility to not make it last till 10 o'clock.
It's like a race. We'll try to get to that 9 o'clock.
Okay, so
Go
I
ahead,
will go
Sarah.
ahead with my committee report. I
Yes.
just want to report that the planning board and the town board made a joint study committee regarding the incidence of solar farms, that there have been so many requests. And I would like to thank Jeffrey Eddies, Chris Carrick, Mike Roach, and Liz Grishow for presenting information to us regarding the business model, and the sort of the lifeblood of solar farms.
Mhm.
We did not, we learned a lot. I don't think we have like the answer, but we learned a lot.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to thank them for contributing their time to town meeting.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
And then for the communications committee, we met, I believe last week or the week before. We are now able to schedule out into July for when things are happening and put that on the communications calendar. We're going to continue to make that as good as possible. And, you know, we talked about a lot of, you know, next steps, how can we improve things? We're getting to the point now where we're pretty sure that the goal, one of the major goals, is going to be to create a position for a communications person within the town. There's clearly enough work to be done to justify it. And, you know, we're going to look at, you know, what it needs to be defined as, but basically the idea would be that communications person is going to be able to take a lot of work off of people's plates, streamline things, and also start working on a communications plan as part of that responsibility.
Okay,
That would be great.
good. Anyone else? Committee, anybody?
I'll just say that Sarah and I are meeting tomorrow with
9 o'clock.
B&L. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
all
I'm on
meeting.
that, yeah.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
Am I invited to?
I will be zooming from a different location.
To go over the steering committee applicants for the comprehensive plan committee. And we want to thank everybody for filling out the survey. We had over 590 respondents.
Great.
And we should be getting some initial results from B&L soon to look through. They're doing an analysis, collating and doing an analysis now. So we're rolling along.
All right.
I have just a super quick 10-second note.
Okay.
Sustainable Manlius is having a press conference on Thursday, I believe it's the 24th of June at 10 a.m. At a house in the village of Fayetteville to launch our community campaigns that we talked about quite a bit at our last meeting. So we will be having that event to launch Get Sustainable, Manlius ! For Community Solar and Heat Smart. So join us if you would like to. It's going to be super fun.
Halco just came to my house today because of Sustainable Manlius.
I drove by and I saw Halco in your driveway and I was like, yes, yep, Get Sustainable Heather.
Working on it.
All right. I have nothing this evening, so we can move right into the executive session.
Okay, so I would like to move that we move into an executive session to discuss the hiring of a person or corporation or some other
The
thing.
employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matter that might lead to the hiring of a particular person.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very
What's the
good.
conference call line?
So now we have,
What's the separate Zoom?
now we have to clear the room.
Wait, do we turn this off or?
Yeah, how do we do that? Everybody back in.
The crowd.
See the crowd?
Elijah.
So now we need to make a motion on the contract. Oh, okay.
Are we ready?
Yes.
That's helpful, right?
So, does anybody want to make a motion to hire Miller Engineers to provide support services to the planning department as set forth in the contract that was presented to the board until we hire a new code enforcement officer?
So moved.
Okay. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, very good. Next is adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, very good.
Hey, we got Elaine to make a motion.
I didn't make a motion.
She
I just
did.
seconded.